Our book today in the Thom Hartmann University Book Club is Trump U, Promises, Lies, and Corruption, My Battle with Donald Trump's Fake University by Art Cohen with Dan Good. This is from Chapter 1, The Art and the Deal. I was in a vulnerable place. I found myself jobless in early 2009 after my consumer electronics company went through a forced sale. I'd poured my life into Ariel Inc. You might remember our Audio Bug FM transmitters, ladybug-shaped devices that aired music from portable devices over a car radio. After Apple's iPod became all the rage, we developed, manufactured, and licensed products for major retailers and brands such as Best Buy's Dynex, Iriver, Kensington, SanDisk, XM Radio, and Delphi. Later, we looked to expand our wireless music transmission offerings with our own i21 brand, working seamlessly with the debut in 2007 of a new iPhone. Everything was going well until it wasn't. The consumer electronics industry was hit hard by the 2008 recession. Our major investor wanted to restructure the company and install new management. I was out as CEO in 2009. I wanted to find something new and fast. It wasn't a great time to be unemployed. The national economy was tanking, and to top it off, Silicon Valley isn't a cheap place to live. I worried about providing for my wife and two sons. At age 44, I found myself at a crossroads, an inflection point in my career. After spending 5 years as a CEO, I wanted to do something different and carve a new path. And then I came across a special invitation in the mail and a full-page ad in the San Jose Mercury News promoting an opportunity. Do you think you can profit in this market? You can, and I'll show you how, proclaimed the advertiser's headline underneath a photo of real estate developer Donald Trump. The ad promised the opportunity to learn from Donald Trump's hand-picked experts. He's the most celebrated entrepreneur on earth. He's earned more in a day than most people do in a lifetime. He's living a life many men and women only dream about, and now he's ready to share with Americans like you the Trump process for investing in today's once-in-a-lifetime real estate market. Come to this free introductory class, and you'll learn from Donald Trump's hand-picked instructors a systematic method for investing in real estate that anyone can use effectively. You'll learn foreclosure investing from the inside out. You'll learn how to finance your deals using other people's money. You'll learn how to overcome your fear of getting started. End quote. The ad featured a guarantee attributed to the man himself. I can turn anyone into a successful real estate investor, including you. So, why not me? Donald Trump was a name I trusted. I grew up in Philadelphia, less than 100 miles from Trump's home base, New York City, so I was familiar with his success as a real estate developer and as an author of the 1987 bestseller, The Art of the Deal. I'd made the hour-long drive to Atlantic City, New Jersey a couple times, and his last name was splashed across the casinos, T-R-U-M-P, and flashing lights. I consider the name Trump synonymous with success and wealth. At least that's what it meant for me back then. During the mid-'80s, while a student at Drexel University, I was one of the co-founding members of the D-Users, widely acknowledged as the first Macintosh users group. I was invited to a Hollywood-style event called Going National, hosted by Drexel on its campus. There, I met the legendary Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple. His inspiring talk that day imagined future computers using artificial intelligence to have conversations with the dead. Not literally, but using inputs known about, for example, Abraham Lincoln. The AI would bring Lincoln to life so you could have a modern-day conversation with him as if he were alive today. Jobs' talk inspired me to lead a team tasked during a competition with imagining the personal computer of the year 2000. There we were to present our vision with an impressive panel. Science fiction writer Ray Bradbury, futurist Alvin Toffler, education writer and historian Diane Ravitch, computer pioneer Alan Kay, and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. A team from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign won the competition. They envisioned a tablet device that sounded an awful lot like the eventual iPad. During a luncheon, I got to sit at a table with Bradbury, and we began talking. He was amiable. He told me how his writing career didn't take off right away. He kept at it, day by day, year by year, and eventually success and fame found him. I love science fiction, and Fahrenheit 451 is one of my favorite books. Besides my father, Bradbury probably inspired me more than anyone else as a writer, something I enjoy doing in my spare time. The Project 2000 contest was beneficial in another way. It allowed me to connect with Apple employees and give them my resume. By 1989, I was moving to California as an Apple employee. I worked as an engineer at Apple until the mid-90s, during the time before Steve Jobs returned to the company. I left to join a company called General Magic, where I worked on product and project management. During my time there, I bumped into a French-born computer programmer who said his wife came up with an idea about selling stuff from around the house online. Everybody laughed about it. I guess Pierre Omidyar got the last laugh. His creation, Auction Web, was later renamed eBay and became one of the world's leading e-commerce companies. I bounced around several tech companies in Silicon Valley, including Coraco, Oracle, and Philips Semiconductors. At one point, I tried my hand at law school, taking classes at night. Philips was picking up the tab. Classes were challenging and my head wasn't in it. It was a big commitment, and I ended up only going for a year. My passion remained with high tech. After moving to California, I didn't keep close tabs on Donald Trump. I wasn't aware of his concealment of cratering. His
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, it's a sober, somber day of mourning, which is why I'm dressed in black today. Our quote for the day from Shelley, Percy Shelley, written in 1819. Rise like lions after slumber in unvanquished number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. Yeah, the morbidly rich are taking over. An illegitimate president, the 14th Amendment explicitly says that somebody who tries to commit sedition to overturn the government of the United States, to overthrow the government of the United States, may not serve in political office. And so we are, as I speak, swearing in, right now it's the vice president, in a moment it'll be the president, an illegitimate presidency for the next 4 years. Grim stuff. So I'm guessing over the course of the next 3 hours of this program, we're gonna get some news about executive orders that Trump signs. He's going to go to a rally. He's going to sign some executive orders there. It's just weird stuff going to be going on here. I'll keep you up to date. We've got a monitor here in the studio, and we're tracking the news. And so, no need to go anywhere else. I've got it all here. President Biden pardoned Anthony Fauci and General Milley and members of his own family. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And also, why won't AOC attend the inauguration? She has a rather in-your-face opinion about this. In the second hour of our program, and of course I'll be picking up your calls. No guests today, it's just you and me. In the second hour of our program, your reminder that the president of South Korea is still in jail for trying to overthrow his government. In fact, he's in solitary confinement. And did South Korea just witness its own January 6th moment over the weekend? I'll tell you about that. Also, the former Canadian finance minister and regular guest on this program at one time, Krista Freeland, who used to be a columnist for the Financial Times and used to come on the Thom Hartmann Program and explain stuff, intends to run to lead Canada, to lead the government's, the country's, governing Liberal Party. And of course, if her party wins the election, she becomes the prime minister. She says, I'm running to fight for Canada. I'll tell you about that in the second hour of the program. And in the third hour of our program, shock and awe, Donald Trump plans 100 immediate executive actions. Here's what could be coming. Actually, by the time the third hour gets around, this story will, and we will know what is happening. But, like I said, I'll keep you up to date. My op-ed today over at HartmanReport.com, my daily take, is titled "The Morbidly Rich: A New Name for an Old Problem." And what should we call them? Right? I mean, attending Trump's inauguration today are three of the wealthiest people in America, arguably in the world: Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and the respective leaders or owners of TikTok, Google, and ChatGPT, who are not quite as rich, but they're all billionaires, right? I believe. So, want near absolute power in America with the approval of at least half of the American public? I mean, we've seen this played out in Russia and Hungary. Just seize control of the media. Just tweak the top secret algorithms that determine, what most people see on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter X, and TikTok, and algorithmically filter the search results of Google and ChatGPT and control the content of the Washington Post. And you've got it. You've got a dictatorship with the approval of the people. We've seen this in country after country. Seize the media first. Half of America now gets their news from Facebook or social media or TikTok or Instagram. And all of these sites are now fully in the bag for Donald Trump. So how do we describe these oligarchs who control these media platforms? At the founding of our republic, Jefferson referred to them as speculators, moneyed interests, or aristocrats. Those were the words that were generally used to describe the morbidly rich. In the years leading up to the Civil War, they were called the cotton lords or the plantation aristocracy. The late 19th century labeled them the robber barons. And in the 1930s, FDR called them the economic royalists. Now, since the Reagan Revolution, we've just largely referred to them as billionaires. And now there's this new phrase, the tech bros. But tech bros is kind of a positive. They're quite proud to call themselves that. Tech is generally viewed as a positive thing, and bros, Mark Zuckerberg just came out and said, we need more masculine energy in American business culture. Right. So we need a new phrase to identify these oligarchs who are reaching out to seize control of our government, our economy, and our culture. And one that is, generally pejorative. I suggest we call them the morbidly rich. Those of you who've been listening to this program for a long time know that I've been using this phrase for 20 years. And there are a few other people who do. I can't claim that I invented it, but to the best of my knowledge, I'm the first person to popularize it. But there's a reason for this. The Oxford Dictionary describes morbidly as describing something which is unhealthy, not good for you. And a physician, Dr. David Clausen, last year wrote a piece for Psychology Today titled Morbid Wealth, in which he pointed out that really mind-bogglingly rich people very often suffer from severe mental and emotional disturbances as a result of their wealth. They can't trust anybody. They're overwhelmed by the responsibilities of their wealth. He writes, from a societal standpoint, extreme wealth and wealth inequality are toxic. Subjectively, we see the ultra-rich and their descendants suffer from such things as anxiety, depression, addiction, and a loss of meaning and purpose. I had a friend, his name was Jack. His father invented Formica. And Jack was born with a $700 million fortune. And I knew Jack for decades, for a couple of decades. We met in the 80s. And Jack had along with his boyfriend, had moved to Vermont and lived in a mansion just, about a half-hour drive from where Louise and I lived in Vermont. He kind of followed us to Vermont. They moved there a few months after we did. And we used to get together all the time. And I remember one time Jack was showing me a new print by wasn't Rembrandt. It was one of the great, one of the old masters. I mean, it was literally a print that cost him like $2 million or something. And it had just arrived, and he was showing it to me. And I was like, well, that's really cool. And just kind of apropos of nothing, out of nowhere, he suddenly gets tears in his eyes. And he said, Tom, you know, I've known you for almost 20 years. He said, I think you're the only person who's never asked me for money. I think you're the only person who actually cares for me. I was just shocked, you know, that this is the difficulty that some very rich people have, that they can't have relationships, or if they do, it's very difficult. So anyhow, I think we need to start referring to these people as morbidly rich. I think their wealth is an illness, not just for them, but also for our society and for our democracy. Remember when Trump promised a room full of morbidly rich fossil fuel executives that if they gave him $1 billion, that he would regulations preventing them from destroying our planet? Well, you know, those top 15 oil billionaires in America, just in the months since Trump offered them $1 billion, or offered them the deregulation, have seen their wealth increase by over $40 billion. Over 2/3 of America, of Americans, according to a new Pew poll, think the mind-bogglingly rich have too much political influence. Now, there are 3 things that have brought this about, of course. The first is that 5 corrupt Republicans on the Supreme Court in the Bilotti and Citizens United decisions said it's okay to buy politicians, number 1. Number 2, Reagan, using Jude Wanniski's 2 Santa Claus strategy, has run up our national debt. Reagan, Trump, and Bush ran up our national debt by $36 trillion with tax breaks for the billionaires. And the third was Reagan's 1983 order to stop enforcing our antitrust laws. Now, I don't have any fantasies that Republicans are going to put those, are going to do anything about raising taxes on rich people or enforcing antitrust laws, or frankly, doing away with this doctrine that money is just free speech. It's not going to happen. But I do think that we can start preparing the ground for the next Democratic administration, and we can start educating people. And I think using the phrase morbidly rich to do so is a good starting point. I realize it's kind of my shtick, but I encourage you to use it on social media, unless you've got a better suggestion for a phrase to describe the morbidly rich. I suppose we could go back to calling them robber barons, but that kind of evokes the late 19th century. It's 17 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a moment. Stay with us.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's our National Day of Mourning, and I'll be right back with your calls and the news. Stay with us. And welcome back, Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Tom. KPFK Radio in Los Angeles had an incident with their backup generator. They were down for 2 full days.
Whoa. Is that over the weekend, you mean?
Oh, yeah, this was over the weekend. Mm-hmm. It's located on Mount Wilson. So I'm waiting for a call from the general manager now to discuss the issue of skullduggery or possible sabotage. I'm not saying that is the case, but I think I've never seen anything like this, and I've been with KPFK since 1970. Issue number 2, Tom, would it have affected Trump's ratings if we would have done a boycott of his speech today? And my last point is, I believe he's going to trigger a national emergency, possibly using the border incident. Then he will trigger martial law. Then he will nullify the Constitution. Your comments, please.
I think all of those are entirely possible. I mean, we'll see. He's speaking right now, so we'll find out shortly what he had to say. And I'm not willing to put him on the air, you know. But
Wouldn't it have helped if we would have boycotted his speech?
Yeah. I suspect. I mean, only a small handful of people showed up in Washington D.C. and which of course is why he moved it indoors. He didn't want to have the tiny crowd and the embarrassment of the tiny crowd. So we'll see. Larry, thanks for the call. Carlos in Carson, California. Hey, Carlos, what's up?
Well, before the fires lose their notoriety, I want to say that they were premeditated, deliberately orchestrated to pave the way for 15-minute cities, otherwise called smart cities, where people will not be able to travel out of their habitat more than 15 minutes by walking or bicycling. There's going to be big buildings built where people are going to be herded into like rats. Okay, and this comes from the higher authorities, where World Economic Forum, the Club of Rome, all them people at the top. They want to restructure society.
Where are you getting this paranoid BS, Carlos?
Yeah, I do a lot of reading.
Are you like watching Alex Jones or something?
Hey, Alex Jones isn't totally wrong. You know, he does a lot of right things. You know, in fact, I used to get on this program quite often.
The World Economic Forum is controlling Los Angeles? Really?
Well,
you're that naive?
The Club of Rome,
you're that gullible?
The Committee of 300. You ever hear the Committee of 300?
Sure, and the Club of Rome, I have a friend who's a member of it. It's basically a debating society. I mean, these people have no real power.
I mean,
Carlos, you're buying into paranoid fantasies that will not serve you well. I guarantee you. I'm sorry. You're just, people are just going to laugh at you when you start spouting that kind of stuff. It's nonsense.
I wake up a couple of really.
I'm listening. Well, he hung up. 21 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls and the news of the day in just a moment. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Did you know that the ancient Roman Republic, which for 480 years was actually a democratic republic before Julius Caesar kind of ended the democracy phase and replaced it with the autocracy phase, that they were brought down by a very small group of very rich people. The richest man in ancient Rome was Marcus Licinius Crassus. He was the richest guy, the billionaire of Rome. And he frankly hated the Roman free bread for all welfare system. It was being paid for with his tax dollars, after all. So him and Pompey the Great and a few other rich guys got together, and they basically crashed Rome. They turned it into an oligarchy and then into a tyranny. And the parallels to what Trump is doing right now are absolutely shocking. There's an article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled "American Caesar: Trump's Path to Power Mirrors Rome's Darkest Days." Check it out.
They're the ones who hold the power, counting dollars by the hour. They twist the truth and bend the rules, while they laugh at the rest of us fools. What do you call a class so bold, with hearts of stone and hands of gold? They've got a name that fits the pitch. Let's call them all the morbidly rich. The morbidly rich. They take it all, while the rest of us are left to crawl. Their greed's a sickness, their wealth's a lie, and democracy's the price we buy.
Welcome Welcome back. 24 minutes past the hour. President Biden pardoned on his way out this morning Anthony Fauci, retired General Mark Milley, all the members of the House January 6th committee, all of the Capitol police officers who were beaten within an inch of their lives, who testified before that committee. He said that the issuance of these pardons should not be mistaken as an acknowledgement that any individual engaged in any wrongdoing, nor should acceptance be misconstrued as an admission of guilt for any offense. Our nation owes these public servants a debt of gratitude for their tireless commitment to the country. Also, just announced just minutes ago, President Biden also pardoned members of his own family, saying that his family has been subject to continuous attacks for years. Those attacks are going to continue, he expects, and so he is pardoning members of his own family so as to basically, end the attacks or put a road of the attacks. He says, rather than accept responsibility or accountability, those who perpetrated the January 6th attack have taken every opportunity to undermine and intimidate those who participated in the select committee in an attempt to rewrite history, erase the stain of January 6th for partisan gain, and seek revenge, including by threatening criminal prosecutions. And, he goes on from there. So, interesting stuff. And AOC has a few words to tell us about why she's not at the swearing-in ceremony. Here she is.
Are you going to the inauguration? Let me make myself clear. I don't celebrate rapists. So no, I'm not going to the inauguration tomorrow.
There you go. And, he also, President Biden also pardoned Leonard Peltier, however you say it. I've heard it both ways. So a lot going on. I think these pardons, history is going to look back at this moment and say that those were acknowledgments by a normal president that basically a tyrant is coming into office. And the big question that we're going to have to face is whether America is going to tread the same path that Russia and Hungary have and flip into tyranny. And if it does, and there's a lot of indications that that's, the direction we're going. If it does, then how do we deal with that? What do we do about that? How do we push back on that? How do we resist? So what's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls on the other side of the break. Our quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it's also his day today. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Dr. King added, hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. We'll be right back. The Thom Hartmann Book Report today, or Book Club today, is Cuban Women Confront the Future. It's an interview with Vilma Espin. Vilma Espin was the president of the Federation of Cuban Women since its founding in 1960, and was the chair of the Commission for Social Prevention and president of the Infancy Institute and the International Federation of Democratic Women. And it's a long-form interview, actually, the book. So the first question: what does socialism mean in the lives of a Cuban family, and in particular, Cuban woman? Vilma Espin. For the Cuban family, especially the woman, socialism has meant an enormous improvement to the quality of life and personal development. We should remember that until January 1st, 1959, in our country, hunger, poverty, exploitation, repression, and dependence reigned. The revolution opened up new horizons in the economic, political, and social fields, and amongst its key principles is the defense of equal rights for all human beings. The constant struggle to make ends meet disappeared, and with it the antagonism between people competing for the crumbs that could help them escape the tragic destiny that awaited the majority. Thus the family, the basic cell of society, could develop in a rounded way. Our revolution assured all Cubans the chance to exercise each one of their inalienable rights. Each citizen is assured that food prices are reasonable and that education and medical services are free. The state makes a systemic effort to improve living standards to the extent that it is permitted by the tense battle for development that we wage under blockade and constant imperialist threats. Child care facilities have been created to provide care for the children of tens of thousands of working women from the age of 3 months to 6 years. Services to lighten domestic work have been created. Hundreds of thousands of students have also received free lunch at day school and all their meals at boarding school. Hundreds of thousands of workers also receive their meals at a moderate price in their workplace. More industrial laundries and dry cleaners have been established, and more domestic labor-saving devices are available with preference in acquisition and cheaper prices for workers. Huge resources are dedicated to housing construction in urban and rural zones. We also try to guarantee recreational facilities and spiritual enjoyment to all the population. Of course, the possibilities are exciting, but also what we have achieved to date, considering our limitations, is already vastly superior to what families experienced in the past. Social Security provides an income for those who cannot work. As far as women are concerned, equal rights have certainly changed their position in the family and in society. A woman's participation in social production, because it implies her financial independence, has altered her dependent position in the marriage and allowed a change in her ideas, in the way she looks at life. The laws that govern family relations, such as the Family Code, are based on equality and guarantee the right of members of the family to participate in society, to work, study, and to responsibly educate the children in line with our revolutionary principles. This does not mean that we achieved all that we aspire to. We still have problems of a material nature to resolve, which are directly related to our economic development. There is still the need to eliminate backward ideas that some people hold, men and women, with respect to the role that each person should play within the home, the nature of the socialist family and the relationship between a couple, ideas which work against the full participation of women in the building of a new society. Obviously, the economic security guaranteed by both men and women having access to work, free health care, and education, the obvious satisfaction and confidence in oneself that equal opportunity and the chance to fully develop to the extent of one's talents, intelligence, and aptitude offer to each person, the constant motivation and emotional stability that comes from feeling useful, recognized, and dignified as a human being. Everything that socialism has brought to us undoubtedly fulfills the deepest desires of a family, particularly the woman, who until just a quarter century ago was exploited, oppressed, and marginalized in the family and in society. Question: what is the primary concern in Cuba, work or the human being? What place do women occupy within this concern? Velma Espin: in Cuba, a country that is building socialism, the highest aim is human happiness, based on respect for the fundamental human rights of each person. That includes full social equality to education, health care, work, and professional training, with the chance to employ all of one's faculties to take an active role in society and to help develop that society, to create the material and spiritual basis for a full, harmonious life, where the highest qualities of both men and women flourish. To reach those aspirations requires work, talent, dedication, and willingness from everybody. It requires constant scientific and technological innovation to assure economic and social development. Thus, each member of our society, along with the right to work and all the benefits brought by the revolution, has acquired the duty to help create the economic basis necessary for such advantages. The building of a new society and the fulfillment of new aspirations could not possibly be achieved except on the basis of work and the willingness of the whole population. And the people work with enthusiasm because work is the means for creating wealth and goods for all to enjoy. Work that is free from exploitation does require a new dimension, a quality that stimulates and produces satisfaction. To feel that you are useful and are creating your destiny, to project yourselves toward the future through your work, to cultivate the future. In a speech in January 1964, Che Guevara said that when each Cuban viewed work as a vital expression of their human creativity, technology, technique, and inventions would proceed apace, and all would participate with an uncontainable force in building the new society. The book, Cuban Women Confront the Future by Velma Espin.
back with a blueprint for tyranny. Wants the press silenced, justice blind, erasing truth, controlling minds. He'll sue the papers, take them down, hand the power to the richest in town. The shadows fall, we're losing light, democracy fading into the night. It's America's descent into darkness, freedom slipping from
During the break, I listened to a little bit of Trump's rant here after being sworn in. And, he starts out, the first thing I heard him say was a lie, So, well, this inflation was caused by excessive government spending, and we're going to put an end to that. Really? I mean, every country in the world was engaging in excessive government spending. And the Republicans are all just jumping up and applauding everything he's saying. It's. All right. So what's on your mind today? Stephen in Lexington, Kentucky. Hey, Stephen, what's up?
Hello, dear. How are you today?
I am fine, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get
that's
better.
Good to hear.
What can I say? It's a
dark
I
understand that. I understand that sentiment. Well, I have a few things to say today. First of all, and I've spoken with my congressperson about this as well, the fact is what happened today was a farce. He violated the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and I don't care how they spell it out. They can sugarcoat it all they want. That is the truth.
Yep.
And I think that both Democrats and Republicans are culpable. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Biden wants to talk about how, this man's a tyrant. Well, he is. And yet, what did Biden and Harris do to help us? They had the evidence. They decided they didn't want to be perceived as the 2020 denialist. Well, I've got news for them. If you have the evidence, you're not akin to them. We're always afraid of being perceived. Well, I've got news for them. They are just like the other side at this point, which is really sad because President Biden did a lot of wonderful things. And I liked Harris. I think she made a great case, but unfortunately they did not have the moxie to follow through. And as far as I'm concerned, I take that as a big personal affront because I wasted my time supporting those two. And I tell you what, if she decides to run in 4 years, if we actually have a country by that time, I sure support her. I think Governor Andy Beshear, Governor Whitmer, Governor Wes Moore, Governor Josh Shapiro, Governor Newsom even. He's even standing up. I think any of those candidates are 2 times better than Harris at this point. So this is part of Biden's legacy, and we should be talking about this. We really should. And by the way, considering Trump's track record of business failures, these robber barons who are celebrating his victory, maybe they should think about that because obviously he doesn't care about anybody. And also, I guess the consolation we have here is the fact that Mr. Trump is not, obviously he's, we all know about his condition. And, I don't know. I'm not, let me put it this way. I'm not overly scared like I was before for some reason. And I'm very intuitive. I have a sixth sense about people and things and very sensitive about that. I think he'll try, but I want to remind people, too, that reports have come out from the U.S. military, from what I understand, that they said they're not going to go along with everything that he is going to wants to do. So I would remind people of that. We're also, by the way, astrologically, I don't know if you believe in this, I do, and it's gotten me through. Astrologically, we're in the age of Aquarius now since November 19th. It should be Age of Aquarius versus Project 2025. And by the way, Aquarius governs Uranus. Uranus is governed by freedom, by democracy, by justice. And maybe people should ruminate on that a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's my call today. I appreciate you. Yeah. Yeah, I think we need...
And I agree that the big legacy of the Biden administration is going to be that they failed to stop Trump.
Well, they did. And by the way, I hear people say that we need to go radical leftist. I'm a liberal myself. I think we need a Kennedy-esque RFK Senior, not the one that's in there now, or Obama-esque type of candidate, right now. We need someone who understands celebrity stint, and what I mean by that is someone who understands the difference between true entertainment and that of the mirage of entertainment, reality.
Stephen,
culture.
we need somebody who has charisma and knows how to use the media too. Stephen, thank you for the call. Will in Austin, Texas. Hey, Will, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
I've got a couple of items on my mind. You brought up the morbidly rich, and it just reminded me. It wasn't that long ago that Ralph Nader wrote a book about how the rich could save us all, and I guess that didn't work out.
That was about a decade ago. Yeah.
And I also wanted to really get your feelings about. I turned the TV on when Musk walked out on stage, and last night at his rally, and then Trump turned around and talked about what a great technologist Musk is, and how he really knew what was going on in Pennsylvania, and
with the voting machine computers. Yes.
Yeah,
it's got a lot of people scratching their
there.
head. Why is Trump congratulating Musk on knowing how the voting machine computers work? Yeah, I saw that. I heard that, and I thought, is he just like putting it in our face? I mean, is he trying to provoke us, or is he claiming something, or is this an inside joke? I honestly don't know. I'm not going to get hysterical about it, but I do think that there's a problem here. Will, thank you for the call. Chris in Northampton, Massachusetts. Hey, Chris, what's up?
Hey, Tom. You challenged there to your listeners to come up with a phrase, beating morbidly rich or matching it or whatever.
Yeah.
My first thought is hoarders. There's tons of shows on individual hoarders, where there's men and women and they're in terrible environments, because of the hoarding. But billionaires are hoarding.
Yeah.
And
no, it's true.
You never have shows that shows, what has more impact, a billionaire's hoarding or an individual's hoarding?
Yeah.
But it's still hoarding. And on top of which, the billionaire's money, as you well know, it doesn't really produce anything except more money for themselves. So what the heck good is it anyway?
Yeah. No, I get it, Chris. I've for years argued that many of the billionaires out there are suffering from a form of obsessive compulsive disorder known as hoarding syndrome, and that had they not been born wealthy or not had an opportunity to become wealthy, they would have, they would be living in an apartment that's filled floor to ceiling with old newspapers and empty tin cans and balls of string. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. My concern with referring to them as hoarders generically is that it's a word that already has meaning elsewhere, and that's why I'm looking for a new phrase. I suppose you could call them rich hoarders or obscenely rich hoarders or something like that. But
right, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thought I'd give it a try.
Yeah, it's a good one. Good try, Chris. Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate the call. Glenn in Kalama, Washington. Glenn, what's up?
Hey, good morning, Tom. Hey, I think I know what's going to go down here in in the next year or so. If you would hear me out, I think that we're going to use our military to go to Greenland and protect our imperialistic.
We already have a military base in Greenland. They've never turned us down for anything. I mean, we've got a military base there. We've got I believe we have a port there. I could be wrong on
this is about the morbidly rich. You see, Greenland has 25 out of 34 critical minerals are used to create batteries.
Yeah, not only that, the northern part of it is the southern part of the Arctic Ocean that is opening up for shipping, between Europe and North America. So yeah.
And so with our takeover of Greenland and extraction of the needed minerals for the morbidly wealthy to get rich on EV vehicles and such, that would make China sort of irrelevant, because we don't need that for anything if we don't need their minerals.
Yeah.
Also, we don't want them to increase their capacity for AI, and Zuckerberg and Google and Alphabet and all of those, they want to capitalize on AI. So we don't need China. I don't know about Panama, but I'll tell you what, China probably would react somewhat using Panama. I don't know, but I think that's what's going to go down for the morbidly rich. Elon Musk is going to benefit. Tech bros are going to benefit, and Trump is going to...
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And Elon Musk, I mean, right now, virtually every one of his companies is being investigated by the federal government. Those investigations are going to go away. There's lawsuits against Google that'll go away. The billionaires and the big corporations, the monopolistic corporations, they're in Fat City here. Thanks for the call, Glenn.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Well, it's the first day of the end of American democracy. Perhaps. We'll see. I'll be back with you picking up your call right after this. And welcome back. Michael in Anchorage, Alaska. Hey, Michael. Thanks for watching Free Speech. What's on your mind today?
Yes, thank you, Tom. I just have a comment, a food for thought, and I'd like to take my answer off the air if you have an opinion. I believe this is like a global land grab by the elitists. And I'm not talking like the Bilderbergs. I'm talking about a form of government that's been around for millions of years. But the thing is, the goodness of people won't let that uprising stand, I don't believe. I'm hoping, I'm an optimist, and I'm also 65 as of December 12th last year. So I'm just saying, I've done a lot of research on the way this world runs, and there are things that are unexplainable, but yet someone has the answer. Anyway, thank you, and carry on.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
More of a... Thank you.
Optimism forward. Thank you. JB in Greensburg, Kentucky. Hey, JB, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I've done the same thing you've done today. I've done everything I could do to avoid watching Trump's thing. Yeah. And I just hope that some of the Republicans are going with the Democrats and him ruining the country.
We'll see. We'll see. Right now, he's got them cowed.
I'll tell you what, yeah. But I hope he doesn't Social Security, because I'm on Social Security. And
well, he'd probably do what Reagan did. Reagan in '83, or maybe it was '86. I forget which year he reformed Social Security. But he raised the retirement age from 65 to 67. But he said it won't take effect for 30 years. He's going to, if Trump messes with Social Security, he's going to do it in a way that doesn't piss off people currently on Social Security. He's going to do it in a way that really harms people who are right now in the 50s, in my opinion.
All right, and I'll tell you what else too. I really do appreciate, Tom, what you do. You get on there every day and tell us the truth about everything, and I really appreciate you doing that.
Oh, thank you, Jim.
And I'm 67 now, and I'm gonna still vote Democrat for life. Yeah, I hope the country wakes up one of these days and realizes what they've done by nominating that criminal to be president again. And so I hope when the next election comes around that we fill the House and the Senate with Democrats, or at least put enough in there where they can control everything.
Well, an awful lot of that is going to depend on the ability of Democrats to communicate. And I realize that there's going to be some huge barriers to that. Right now, anytime a Democratic senator or congressman or woman or just somebody like me posts something on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram or Threads that is, kind of a anti-Trump or anti-Republican or even just left-leaning policy, like, hey, let's, have free college for everybody or free health care. it doesn't get the kind of amplification that right-wing hate and right-wing hysteria do. That's going to be it's going to be a real serious problem for the next couple of years. But I think that in many ways we can overcome that, and I suspect that 2 years from now, or a year and a half, almost a year and a half, a year and 3/4 from now, we're going to see some very, very different policies and people coming into Washington, D.C. But we'll see. JB, thanks for the call. I appreciate your optimism. It's 10 minutes before the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
He stepped up to the mic with the gleam in his eyes. Said he'd take the reins, let the freedom die. No more rules, just his command. He'd be the ruler of this land. Promises of power, promises of might. He'd make the world tremble at his sight. Day one, he'd change it all. Turn our nation's rise into a fall. Dictator on day one, said he'd be tearing down.
Yep, today is day one. Do we get a dictator like promised? We'll see. Picking up your calls here, Matt in Augusta, Georgia. Hey, Matt, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Hey, Tom, I love your show, man. So I've learned so much over the years. No, well, but this is just. I can't tell you. I've had a really rough few years. I mean, I've had health problems. So I've lost everything. Been homeless. I'm back in home. Been working for the last 6 months. I have a touch of OCPD along with some kind of allergic reaction in my lung. I think it's scarred up. My lungs are scarred up from COVID. But if he gets rid of the ACA, I'm dead. I just started this treatment. Oh, really? And I'm going to need it. And I'm going to need it. This is going to be a lifelong treatment. But anyway, I do get to tune in every once in a while. And the last time Mark Pocan was on air, and I like Mark a lot, but you had a caller who was talking, basically the effect of, well, you're not fighting. Democrats aren't fighting. And Mark comes back with the same old, if you tune in, then we're opposing legislation. In today's politics, that's not fighting. Yeah. To simply oppose legislation like they've always done is not fighting. And what you just said about the social media, and if they try to put anything out on social media to be taken down over the next couple of years, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to get these Democrats to understand that they have got to be on TV all day, every day, just like Trump? They've got to fall in line. You had Jemiah Paul on, and she raised hell about Gaza, which, of course, and I'm not even going there. That's a 2,000-year-old something I don't know that much about. But where are they? Why don't they fall in line? And I'm sorry for yelling at you, but why don't they fall in line?
No, I get it, Matt. Democrats still believe in governing. They still believe in government running the way it used to run. I think a few of them have gotten the memo. You saw the clip from AOC earlier in the program where she said, "I don't celebrate rapists. I'm not going to show up at the inaugural."
Yeah, I'm on lunch. I'm sorry, I'm on lunch right now, but I did hear that. I did hear that.
We need a whole lot more of that kind of stuff. You know, we need Democrats really peeling the bark off the Republicans and going after them with the same ferocity that Republicans have been coming after Democrats. You know, at least for the last 10 years. So I'm with you.
For the last 4, we've been dealing with this from the right for 40 years.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, I mean, yeah, Reagan started, and they have rolled over, and now we have lost it. As it is right now, what happened today, we've lost it.
Yeah.
So, and it scares me. You know, it scares me.
I'm sure you're concerned. Matt, thank you for the call. Christy in Phoenix. Hey, Christy, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I've been listening to you since about 2003, 2004 from Alaska, then New Mexico, and now Arizona. I've got some disappointing information to share with you and a feel-good if there's time.
Okay.
The disappointing information is I tried to listen to you this morning on Sirius Radio, and they are not running you. They are playing the inauguration, and this is not the first time they preempted you.
Oh, really?
And I'm disappointed in that. And so I'm going to maybe drop them if that's what they're going to do. So I just wanted you to know that.
Well,
you and your listeners.
I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, you know, the Sirius Progress Channel 127 is really the only national progressive radio station or network. So
You make a good point, and I certainly listen to you about what you say. So you got time for the feel good?
Sure.
Okay. A few years ago, there was a man that called into your program, and he said nobody goes to Mexico for their dentist. I was standing in the parking lot in Yuma, Arizona, having just come across the the bridge from Algodones, where my husband and I went to the dentist.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got off the phone, son called me, and this is the feel good, at least for me, called me from Seattle and said, "Hey, Mom, I heard you on Thom Hartmann. Second generation listening to Thom Hartmann. I was thrilled."
That's great. That's great. And yeah, there's a lot of Americans go to Mexico for dentistry because, you know, it's just out of control here in the United States, as are all medical expenses.
That's true. Then the Canadians as well. So All right, Tom. You have a good one. Stay healthy and stay on the air.
I will do my very best, Christy, and hopefully they'll pick us up, you know, at the start of the next hour. Christy, thank you very much for the call. It's great to hear from you, and thanks for listening to Sirius XM, even if they are preempting us for the swearing in. I have a feeling that will come to a close very quickly. Christy, thanks. We'll be right back. We're hitting the top of the hour. Your reminder that the president of South Korea is still in jail, and they just had their January 6th moment over the weekend. I'll tell you about that and what's going on with the Canadian politics. We'll talk about that too. And shortly we should be hearing about Donald Trump and his signing statements, his presidential executive orders. Stay tuned. I'll keep you up to date.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Hi, for our book club today, we're reading from Bernie Sanders' new book, Where We Go From Here, 2 Years in the Resistance. This is from the introduction. During my campaign for president in 2016, I stated over and over again that the future of our country was dependent upon our willingness to make a political revolution. I stressed that real change never occurs from the top down. It always happens from the bottom up. No real change in American history, not the labor movement, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the gay rights movement, the environmental movement, or any other movement for social justice has ever succeeded without grassroots activism, without millions of people engaged in the struggle for justice. That's what I said when I ran for president. That's what I believe now. That's what I've been working to accomplish over the last several years. At a time of massive and growing income and wealth inequality, as our nation moves closer and closer to an oligarchic form of society, we need an unprecedented grassroots political movement to stand up to the greed of the billionaire class and the politicians they own. And the good news is we're making progress. People in every region of our country are standing up and fighting back against the most dishonest and reactionary president in the history of the republic. In state after state, they're also taking on establishment politicians who are more concerned about protecting their wealthy campaign contributors than they are with the needs of the middle class and the working people they're supposed to represent. We're making progress when millions of people in every state in the country take to the streets for the Women's March in opposition to Trump's reactionary agenda. We're making progress when an unprecedented grassroots movement elects a young African American as mayor of Birmingham, Alabama. We're making progress when tens of thousands of Americans turn out at rallies and town hall meetings to successfully oppose the Republican effort to throw 32 million people off health insurance. We're making progress when governors and local officials announce in response to student demands tuition-free public colleges and universities. We're making progress when over the past 2 years, hundreds of first-time candidates of every conceivable background run for school boards, city council, state legislature, and Congress, and many of them win. The good news is that the American people are far more united than the media would like us to believe. They get it. They know that over the past 40 years, despite a huge increase in worker productivity, the middle class has continued to shrink while the very rich have become very much richer. They know that for the first time in the modern history of the United States, our kids will likely have a lower living standard than us. The bad news is that instead of going forward together, demagogues like Trump win elections by dividing us. The bad news is that too many of us are getting angry at the wrong people. I was not an immigrant picking strawberries it was not an immigrant picking strawberries at $8 an hour who destroyed the economy in 2008. It was the greed and illegal behavior of Wall Street. It was not transgender people who threw millions of workers out on the street as factories were shut down all across the country. It was profitable multinational corporations in search of cheap labor abroad. Our job, for the sake of our kids and grandchildren, is to bring our people together around a progressive agenda. Are the majority of people in our country deeply concerned about the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality that we are experiencing? You bet they are. Do they believe that our campaign finance system is corrupt and enables the rich to buy elections? Overwhelmingly, they do. Do they want to raise the minimum wage to a living wage and provide pay equity for women? Yes, they do. Do they think that the very rich and large corporations should pay more in taxes so that all of our kids can have free tuition at public universities and colleges? Yep. Do they believe that the United States should join every other major country and guarantee health care as a right? Yes, again. Do they believe climate change is real? You got to be kidding. Are they tired of the United States of America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, falling apart at the seams with roads, bridges, water systems, wastewater plants, airports, rails, levees, and dams either failing or at risk of failing? Who isn't? Further, a majority of the American people want comprehensive immigration reform and a criminal justice system that is based on justice, not racism or mass incarceration. Today, what the American people want is not what they're getting. In fact, under Republican leadership in the House, Senate, and White House, they are getting exactly the opposite of what they want. The American people want a government that represents all of us. Instead, they're getting a government that represents the interests and extremist ideology of wealthy campaign contributors. They want environmental policies that combat climate change and pollution and that will allow our kids to live on a healthy and habitable planet. Instead, they're getting executive orders and legislation that push more fossil fuel production, more greenhouse gas emissions, and more pollution. They want a foreign policy that prioritizes peacemaking. Instead, they're getting increased military spending and growing hostility to our long-term democratic allies. They want a nation in which all people are treated with dignity and respect and where we continue our decades-long struggle to end discrimination based on race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, and nation of origin. Instead, they have a president who seeks to win political support by appealing to those very deep-seated prejudices. During the last several years, I've worked hard in Washington, but I've also traveled to 32 states in every region of our country. I've seen the beauty, strength, and courage of our people. I've also seen fear and despair. I've talked to people with life-threatening illnesses in West Virginia who worry about what will happen to them or their loved ones if they lose the health insurance that keeps them alive. I've talked to young immigrants, dreamers in Arizona who are frightened to death about losing their legal status and being deported from the only country they have ever known. I talked to a young single mom in Nevada worried about how she can raise her daughter on $10.45 an hour. I talked to retirees and older workers in Kansas who are outraged that as a result of congressional legislation, they could lose up to 60% of the pensions they paid into and were promised as deferred compensation for a lifetime of hard work. Bernie Sanders, where we go from here.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the second hour of our program. As I mentioned, it's a National Day of Mourning. I am wearing black. In fact, I think most of our staff is wearing, there's Sean dressed in black. Indeed. Trump just got sworn in. The AP picture shows him not having his hand on the Bible. I don't know if that was just for a moment or if that was through the whole thing, or if, it's even a real picture. I mean, it's circulating right now in social media. Was he afraid that his hand would burst into flames? I don't know. I don't know. He did say this. He said, "Over the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history." Really? More than Abe Lincoln, who fought the Civil War? More than Franklin Roosevelt, who fought World War II, or Woodrow Wilson, who fought World War I? This guy's self-centeredness and hubris is just mind-boggling. Just absolutely mind-boggling. So, anyhow, as I said, I'll be getting with you about what we're seeing in terms of executive orders as they start coming down. South Korea, meanwhile, over the weekend, it's been, I think, about 2 weeks, maybe a little longer, that the president of South Korea has been in prison. At first, they tried to arrest him, and a bunch of people prevented that from happening, but now he's in jail. In fact, he's in solitary confinement. And so over the weekend, there was the Seoul Western District Court building. They held a hearing for him, and a crowd showed up, much like Trump's crowd, and attacked the building, left 51 police officers hospitalized, 7 seriously injured. Broadcast journalists from KBS and NBC, the 2 big South Korean networks, were attacked and had their equipment damaged. This is, you wonder, is Russia driving this? Is China driving this? Are there right-wing billionaire oligarchs in South Korea who are driving this? I mean, we know that Reverend Moon's son is here in the United States, I believe, pushing a kind of a new cult where they have they carry AR-15s and they have bullets around their, as a crown of bullets. He's got a crown of bullets. I don't know if his shtick has any relation to this or not. Far-right pastor Jean Kang-hoon told supporters that the people's right to resist, quote, supersedes the Constitution, and said that he would pay protesters to attend the anti-impeachment rallies. The Yan-kun camp, the pro-Yoon camp, this is from The Guardian. The pro-Yoon camp has taken its cue from its equivalent in the U.S. in form and substance, from the Stop the Steal placards and MAGA-inspired baseball caps to the unfounded claims that National Assembly elections in 2020 and last spring were rigged. The acting president, Chai Sang-mok, described the scenes of violence as unimaginable in a democratic society. I think that's a good way of putting it. It's pretty amazing. Meanwhile, up in Canada, Chrystia Freeland, who has been a guest on this program a number of times back in the day, back when she was a reporter for the Financial Times, and she's just a brilliant financial analyst. This is a woman who really understands both politics and finance. She resigned, very publicly resigned from the Justin Trudeau administration a couple of weeks ago, saying that she did not agree with his effort to make peace with Donald Trump, basically. And in fact, she just she said that Canada must. She denounced the use of Trudeau's quote costly political gimmicks and said Canada must push back against America First economic nationalism. And in addition to that, she said, Florida orange growers, Michigan dishwasher manufacturers, and Wisconsin dairy farmers, brace yourself, arguing that Canada is going to retaliate if Trump puts tariffs on Canada. So she's going to run for the leadership of the Liberal Party, which Trudeau is the head of right now, and they're going to vote on their new leader on the 9th of March. Now, if she wins that, she does have a fellow who's former Bank of Canada and Bank of New England Governor Mark Carney is also running against her. But if she wins, she will face off against Pierre Poilievre. I don't know how to pronounce it, Poilievre, who is the conservative, and his party's actually leading right now in the national polling. So, we'll see what happens in Canada, but this right-wing movement that we just, I just described what's going on in South Korea. It's happening in Canada. It's happening in the United States. It's happening all across Europe. And almost in every case, it's being driven by white people upset about too many brown people immigrating into the country. I mean, that's what drove Trump. And again, climate change is driving people out of places like, Guatemala and Nicaragua up into the United States. It's driving farmers off their land. Climate change was what drove farmers in Syria off their land and into the cities. And then when they started protesting, saying that they wanted basically welfare, they wanted food, Assad came out and shot at them. And then Russia came in to defend Assad. This was, 10 years ago or a little more like 15 years ago. This was the Arab Spring. And we covered it extensively on this program. And the Arab Spring was provoked by climate change. And then that response by Assad and by Russia to, bombing the crap out of Aleppo and reducing to rubble a good part of Damascus, that led to some 5 to 6 million Syrians fleeing north across the, into southern Europe and heading through Europe. Angela Merkel, the then chancellor or prime minister, whatever her title was, of Germany, accepted 1 million. Sweden opened their doors and let a lot in. I mean, this is a humanitarian disaster. But these right-wing movements, Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, the right-wing movements in country after country, Giorgia Meloni in Italy, who was at Trump's swearing in this morning, by the way. All of these right-wing movements are basically grounded in hate of brown-skinned immigrants. These are all, at their foundation, white supremacist or white nationalist movements. And the same thing is happening in Canada. Canada under Justin Trudeau, Pierre was his father, the previous prime minister, or an earlier prime minister. But under Justin Trudeau, Canada took in a lot of immigrants, and many of them Syrians. And now you've got this whole right-wing backlash about, there's too many brown people, there's too many Muslims, they're not us, it's disrupting the character of our country, it's a threat to our security, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. And we're seeing this all over the world. And it's being amplified, of course, by white nationalists who run social media companies and the whole giant white nationalist apparatus that Vladimir Putin runs out of Russia on social media. So, how's this going to play out here in the United States? I don't know. We'll see. It's 14 minutes past and a half past the hour. I'll be back with your calls. What's on your mind right after this?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's your media support group for We the People on this dark, dark day. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Patrick in Seaside, California. Hey, Patrick, what's up?
Hi, Tom. My main points were concerning mail delivery and Amazon and progressive publications, but I had a couple quick points I wanted to make. My first point is pretty much facetious. I think that when you talk about Republican book bans, I think we should try as best we can to keep satirical, dystopian, cautionary tale, sci-fi books like 1984, Brave New World, Handmaid's Tale, and Fahrenheit 451 out of the hands of MAGA top personnel, because they can't process satire, sarcasm, or irony.
Think it's an instruction manual.
Yes, exactly. They use them as instruction manuals. Before I get to my main points, I'm 62. And George Orwell, I don't know if I've brought this up before, George Orwell ruined my life forever in ninth grade English class when we were out of the gate, first book assignment assigned in 1984. And for the last 30 years, I've been building my own personal library of what I call book candy, not brain candy. And I'm not talking about dispensary cannabis products. I'm talking about books, film, music. I live in my own library. Aside from two bathrooms and a hallway, I have bookshelves on every wall. The laundry room has a big bookshelf full of DVDs because I don't want them sucked down the memory hole. In case we arrive in times exactly like what we're living in right now, getting back to my main points, I'm just wondering, and I've been trying to gobble up as many anti-Trump, anti-MAGA books, progressive, current events and history books that I can from Amazon before God knows what happens, if he declares martial law. I was wondering if you think that there might actually be a possibility, since Jeff Bezos is, in with both feet, if they might, if they do declare some form of martial law, if they're going to maybe I'm going to still buy up as many books as I can while I can, but I'm just wondering if there's a possibility you think of tracking our mail, like, oh, this guy subscribes to In These Times, The Progressive, New Republic, Atlantic, and Mother Jones. Well, let's keep an eye on him. Yeah. I get 7-day New York Times delivery. I'm just wondering if they would shut down the mail delivery, take over the post office, track what packages some of us on the left are getting and what publications we subscribe to. And
the post office, Patrick, apropos of that, the post office, a year into this new thing where they will take a picture of your mail and send it to you in email every morning so you know what mail you're getting. And my understanding is that there are privacy laws that protect us, but if they privatize the post office, that data just gets sold. So anybody can buy the pictures of all the mail you're getting and figure out who you are and what you're all about fairly easily and fairly quickly.
I'm going to proceed full steam ahead. Like I said, I'm going to try and gobble up all these books before they get banned, or the FBI under Kash Patel seizes and pulps them and burns them. Another thing I wanted to throw out before you let me go, I let you go. I just wonder if there's any history, any documentation, any books written about Krupp and I.G. Farben and the billionaires. Did they comply with Hitler because they were afraid of having their wealth seized and assets and thrown in camps, or were they gung-ho till the bitter end in the
initially it was because they thought Hitler was going to help make them even richer. Fritz Tyson of Tyson Steelworks wrote a book called I Paid Hitler. He ended up having to flee Germany in the mid-30s. So, yeah, they thought that he was going to help, just like these tech bros do now. Thank you. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. You know, other countries enjoy benefits like free health care and mass transit, affordable housing, food, and drugs. They also have inexpensive internet and phone service without companies listening and selling their information. Schools that don't need to mention school shooters. Streets and parks filled with pedestrians and children instead of tents and homeless people. We, on the other hand, have the world's largest collection of billionaires. Most Americans probably didn't realize this was the choice they were making back in the election of 1980 when Reagan and Bush promised morning in America. But here we are. We have been just basically sold out to the billionaires by all these years of Republican, Reaganomics. What do we do about it? Well, there's a lot we can do about it, and it starts with getting politically active. There's a great op-ed about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, America Chose Wealth Over Well-Being. Check it out. 20 minutes past the hour, picking up your calls here. Terry in Salisbury, Maryland. Hey, Terry, what's up?
Yes, hi, Tom. Thanks for all you do. I just wanted to say I was at the People's March this weekend in D.C., and I had also been at the Women's March 8 years ago. I keep fighting for everything we stand for, and I also worked the election this year. So that was actually very comforting. But I found it ironic. Yesterday, we went, friends of mine, we went to the Holocaust Museum, which I've been a couple of times in D.C., and it was interesting that there were countless people with all kinds of things with Trump hats and shirts, and obviously probably because of the inauguration today. But it was just the irony that they were standing there while it was the rise of Hitler, and they're wearing all this paraphernalia. So I just wanted to comment and let you know that, we found it very interesting. And listen, I think everybody should be educated on it because maybe they'll see, but you wonder how many of them actually see the correlation, even in the slightest bit.
Yeah.
So that was my weekend, and I just wanted to share that with you.
Fascinating, Terry. Yeah, somehow MAGA hats and the Holocaust Museum don't seem like they would go together, but I get it. Okay, Terry.
Right, even the line out the door was like that, so we found that quite interesting. So,
yeah, I get
again,
it.
Thank you for all you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry. Good talking to you. Angela, say, Kenyatta, what's on your mind today?
Well, I want you and your audience to think about, for the minute and a half you might give me, how I looked at this speech from 500 years of history as a black man and original American as well in the United States. Donald Trump used the words manifest destiny. I don't know if the average European American knows how offensive a term that is to me. And when he said this, he followed with expand our territory. He said we tamed wilderness and ended slavery. And when he said we ended slavery, I thought I was going to pass out.
Yeah.
You know, about a week ago, Charlie Kirk, I know you're familiar with him, the right-wing political idiot. He said that Carrie Underwood would be performing at the inauguration. And this is what he said, Tom. He said, finally, someone with blonde hair and blue eyes. We're back. If it had been Kamala Harris, we would have been looking at Lizzo's ass for 45 minutes.
Wow.
Do you realize?
Yeah, racism is alive and well, and slavery is still legal in the United States as long as you've been convicted of a crime. So
under the 13th Amendment, as you and I have talked about before. So let me just say this, Tom. You know, I hope I'm wrong, but it seems like the spirit of those who would fight Donald Trump, that young lady that just spoke with you talked about in 2016, that there were protests, there were hundreds of thousands of people, there were pink hats, but there's nothing now. And there's an old term that my grandparents and my father used to use. It talked about breaking the spirit of a horse. If you abuse an animal or a child, you break
their spirit. And I'm wondering if the opposing party, if we want to call them Democrats, progressive, if their spirit has been broken, because Donald Trump has extorted, spayed, and neutered 370 million people. Do you understand? There's no righteous indignation, and there seems to be a palpable cloud of intimidation and social political ankle grabbing. I'm sorry to be crude, but this is very concerning for me, especially from where I sit. Tell me where I've got it wrong. Oh, by the way, all of this, manifest destiny, expand our territory, tame wilderness, end slavery, all on MLK Day. Do you realize the irony this is to me?
Oh, it's not irony, it's obscenity. But yeah, I get it, and I agree with your perspective, Kenyatta, and you said it very well. You're very good at that. You pull these things together and summarize them brilliantly. It's one of the reasons I like your newsletter over on Substack.
Well, listen, I apologize to all my readers because I know a lot of them are yours as well. But here in Southern California, I've been spared the fire, but the winds are back up today to almost 80 miles an hour. And one of the big problems no one knows is that we have had constant power outages.
Yeah.
So when you make your living the way that you and I do, guess what that means?
Yeah, there you go. Kenyatta, good. Thank you for the call. Tabitha in Cotton Valley, Louisiana. Hey, Tabitha, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I really like your show. I just wanted to piggyback off a call you had earlier. Identify with the concept of hoarding. I don't have stuff piled up to the ceiling, but I don't let go of things very easily. I think the term we should use for those billionaires that keep trying to accumulate more money just for self-gain should simply be money hoarders. I think that has a nice ring to it. What do you think?
I like money hoarders. I've used it. I've pointed out that I think these people, many of these people, suffer from this, the extreme hoarding. Not like you have a hard time letting go of things. Me too. I've got pretty much every book I've ever read since I was, in my 20s in my library right now. There's bookshelves all over my house. I don't think that I'm a hoarder. I think I'm a collector. So
right.
But for some people it's pathological. I mean, you literally can't walk through their houses. And that's, in my mind, that's what it's like for many of these billionaires who have just, accumulated way more money than they'll ever be able to use, and it's still not enough. It's just more and more and more. So I like it. Money hoarders. I like it, Tabitha. Tabitha, I got to run it. Thank you for the call. That was great. Yep, good talking to you. Thank you. 27 minutes past the hour. Back with more of your calls in just a moment. On the other side of this break, it's the Thom Hartmann Program, defending America from the weapons of mass deception. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Former President Joe Biden and his wife Jill are in the Marine One helicopter just now departing the Capitol building. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Brainwashing of My Dad, How the Rise of the Right-Wing Media Changed a Father and Divided Our Nation and How We Can Fight Back by Jen Senko. This is from Chapter 6, How Talk Radio Hijacked My Dad. In 1984, Reagan was reelected in a landslide victory against liberal Democrat Walter Mondale. That year was also when everything began to change for my dad and our family. In 1984, Dad retired from his job with the federal government at age 62. Both my parents missed being near the shore, so they moved back to New Jersey and settled in Toms River, a town where there was a large retired population. Still energetic, my father got a part-time engineering job 3 or 4 days a week, necessitating a long solo commute by car. He didn't want to waste time on music while driving. He wanted to be stimulated mentally, and he discovered talk radio to keep himself company. At the time, Bob Grant was the dominant talk radio personality. Often called the conservative radio, Grant was an openly racist, sexist, far-right shock jock. On his WABC radio show, he referred to blacks and Hispanics as savages. He believed them to be inferior, and he once even called Martin Luther King Jr. a slimeball. With his combative and testy style, he was considered a pioneer of the talk radio format. Soon, Grant became my dad's commuting buddy. I didn't know Bob Grant from Joe Namath, but I did know I didn't care for his style of yelling at callers or hanging up on them if they disagreed with him. My mother was not a fan of Grant's either, and she delighted in telling me the story of how she ran into him one day. She was at the Ocean County Mall eatery, sitting at a table having lunch when she saw Grant walk in. She recognized him, and when he passed her table, she asked, "You're Bob Grant, aren't you?" He said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Oh, my husband likes you, but I don't." He had been walking away and turned to look back at my mother and gave a little laugh. She said she just sat there at the table and did not smile back. Gradually, it seemed my dad started becoming more agitated after listening to Bob Grant. Eventually, he became consistently more irritable, excitable, and easy to anger. Little did we know, a metamorphosis was beginning. Along with massive deregulation in the communications industry, there were several other factors that led to talk radio's explosion of popularity in the 1980s. The first was that music had moved from the AM dial to the high-fidelity sound of FM, and thus left a void on the AM dial. Broadcasters realized that filling that blank airspace with mainstream news wouldn't make much money. However, entertainment made money, and talk radio was entertainment at its finest, even when it masqueraded as news coverage. Human conversation didn't benefit from high-fidelity sound the way music did, so talk radio filled the void on the AM radio waves perfectly. The second contributor to talk radio's rise was the new accessibility of satellite technology, allowing anyone to broadcast a show nationally. And the third was the fact that when 1-800 numbers became available, you could have callers call in from all over the country. These factors combined to make a pretty powerful storm. The format of talk radio was, of course, not new. The format first debuted in the 1920s, continuing with Father Charles Coughlin's controversial and anti-Semitic radio broadcasts in the 1930s. Coughlin has often been referred to as the father of hate radio, and he paved the way for all that has come in his medium. Many of the most famous conservative talk radio personalities modeled themselves after the 1950s sensation Joe Pine. His show, It's Your Nickel, consisted of Pine debating his opinions with people calling in. Calls often culminated with him insulting the caller, to the delight of his audience. The format of talk radio evolved from there, but many of the most popular shows and hosts, including Bob Grant, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and Glenn Beck, have stuck with the confrontational tone and high-emotion interactions that these early hosts introduced. There haven't been many successful liberal talk radio hosts. Ed Schultz, Randy Rhoads, and Alan Colmes tried to make inroads, but simply failed to draw a large audience, in quotes. You may wonder why conservative talk radio programs have been so phenomenally popular while equivalent liberal shows have foundered. Aside from big money to support it, the secret seems to lie in the inflammatory approach favored by these so-called conservative hosts. Abram Brown of Forbes says of liberal talk radio shows, it's not the same thing as a Limbaugh or a Hannity. It's more general, not really railing against the system. No one's yelling, we need to get rid of the Republicans. They're the worst thing that happened in this country. But you'll hear conservative radio hosts say that about liberals on their programs. Brown makes another good point that speaks to that. Tell your audience that the mainstream media is corrupt and biased, that there's more than that there's all the more reason to turn to your conservative talk radio to get the truth. Anger is a hot commodity. Finding an enemy is even hotter. Or as Ailes might say, it's the emotions, stupid. He did not actually say that. A little known but very chilling example of how powerfully influential radio can be is the 1994 Rwandan genocide, where an estimated 800,000 citizens were brutally murdered by their fellow citizens, the Hutus. This happened after an intense radio campaign that started in 1993 dehumanized and demonized one group, the Tutsis. Militia groups were formed, and police and soldiers joined them in the killing. Samantha Power, who later served as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, said killers often carried a machete in one hand and a transistor radio in the other hand. Dad discovers Rush Limbaugh. About a year or so after working part-time in his long commute, my dad officially retired. The book, The Brainwashing of My Dad, by Jen Senko. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out. 35 minutes past the hour, picking up your calls here. Carol in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Hey, Carol, what's up?
Hello, Tom. Hey, I just want to say a couple things. Please have Free Speech TV roll Vigilante Inc., and I encourage everybody to watch that over and over again. I've only seen it on once, and I was able to watch the whole thing. So everyone, we need real big-time activism in Georgia for sure.
Okay.
So please, if you could, and Tom, if you could please do all you can to get it on there regularly.
Well, you should let the folks at Free Speech TV know, not me. I don't run the network.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Was there a president or something I need to write to?
I'm guessing that there's contact information at freespeech.org.
Okay, I'll look for it. Okay, I wanted to tell the book collector there are several great books. It's actually fact-based poetry based on all the stuff that's happened during the first, Oathbreaker, insurrectionist time, and what was done by Oathbreaker, and then all through the Biden administration, how he kept popping up, and all the things that were going on, plus all the criminals around him. So it's called Tiny Little Cracks. This is for his collection, Tiny Little Cracks, and it's by last name Graham. And it's on, I believe the whole collection's on Amazon.
Cool.
So anyway, the other thing.
Yeah, it's a good time if you want to make a statement right now about what just happened, with Trump being sworn in. Two things you can do. Number one, pick your favorite progressive politician, go to their website and donate some money, whether it's $5 or $50 or $500, whatever. And number two, go online to the bookstore of your choice and buy one of the books from one of the people out there who are speaking out about this. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, Timothy Snyder, my book. This is not a plug for buy my books, but there's a number of authors who have been very outspoken, who are telling the truth, who are speaking out about what's going on in this country. And I can tell you from personal experience, writing books is not a way to make a living, and they can use your help. So back to you, Carol.
Yes, thanks, Tom. And Tom, I have your books, and I reread them, actually. So anyway, just want to let you know that. But yes, it's Tiny Little Cracks and out there on Amazon. And I think I already told the author, Graham, Graham. Anyway, Today, people, is Inspiration Day. Do not be discouraged. What was so cool, and President Carter got his last accomplishment in for right up till the day, to the minute that President Biden was passed that off to Oathbreaker. That flag was at half-mast, so pretty much the inauguration was pretty much taken up with the flag at half-mast. Goes right along with us wearing black. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, you're welcome, Carol. Thank you. Well said. Jeremiah in Coalport, Pennsylvania. Hey, Jeremiah, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I hope I'm wrong about this, but I think in one of your previous shows that you unwittingly predicted that America is going to transform into a dictatorship. You had said that oligarchies, which we are one now, are unstable, and either they go back into democracies or they transform into right-wing dictatorships like Russia or Hungary.
Correct.
given the choice between the two of those, I think the uniquely stupid American people, the ones who can't seem to do anything about mass shootings, are going to pick a right-wing dictatorship. And I don't think you see what I see because of your optimism. But, I mean, we should definitely resist this.
Mm-hmm. I think it's entirely possible. I would not argue with you, Jeremiah. I mean, that's what we just chose in the last election. If the numbers are correct. Now, Greg Palast is going to be on the program on Thursday, and he's got some, shall we say, contradictory information about who won the election. But we'll get to that on Thursday. But this is what is happening all over the world, and like I said, it's largely a bigoted white response to brown-skinned immigrants, and that's the main thing that's driving it here in the United States. Although there's also a male response to women having equal political power, and of course the whole fundy religious response to the queer community. But
do you see a path to democracy for Hungary, Russia, or China?
Not for Russia and China right now. Probably not for China at all. China has no history of democracy. They have no experience of democracy. And the communist system has done well by their middle class. I mean, when I lived there in 1988, in November of '88, it was a disaster. Or maybe it was November of '86, excuse me. And it was very, very poor. I mean, and now they've got a larger middle class than the entire U.S. population. We'll see. But, Hong Kong, I think, was a huge indicator of that. With regard to Russia, again, Putin, here's how that flip happens. When you have oligarchy, basically, oligarchies are also kleptocracies. They're also, forms of government where the rich people are using the government to convert the resources of the country to their own wealth, and in the process ripping off, working class people and the poor. And eventually people get pissed off and they try to rise up. And that's the point at which the oligarchs become the tyrants. That's the point at which they start shooting at people in the streets. That's the point at which they start arresting people for speaking out. Viktor Orban has arrested people for calling him a tyrant on Facebook. Vladimir Putin arrests people for just standing in the street with a blank piece of paper as a sign. So that is that. They've made that transition. You can tell when that happens.
And we're seeing a lot of people obey in advance already.
Well, we've got that, but what we don't have yet is the oligarchs or the government on behalf of the oligarchs using violence to crack down. And when that happens, or if that happens in the United States, then we're heading toward tyranny. And that's also typically the point at which the people start to try to fight back. And that's what we saw in Ukraine. That's what we saw in Brazil. We've seen, this is what we saw in Chile. We've seen a number of countries where it went from oligarchy to tyranny and then to democracy. So, don't give up. Even though it's a very, very difficult time, I think that, America, there's a strong American spirit of freedom and democracy, and I have a lot of faith in it. Jeremiah, thank you for the call. Holly in Washington, D.C. Hey, Holly, what's up?
Hi. It was a number of years ago. There was an interviewer asked Pete Buttigieg to make a comment on the fascination with Trump. And his response struck me. He said, well, like anything grotesque, you'd hate to see it, but you can't look away.
Right.
I was thinking about grotesque richness. And the word grotesque, more than morbid, is known by the vast amount of people. That's gross, that's grotesque. Mm-hmm. So it's just an alternative idea for instead of morbid.
The grotesquely
just,
rich?
Use them both. Grotesquely rich.
Turn it into an adverb?
Sounds real. Yep, you got it.
Yeah, I like it. Holly, thank you. That was a good one. Rick in Grass Valley, California. Hey, Rick, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Love your show.
Thank you.
The best resistance is always living happily. So I would just encourage everyone to laugh at Republicans. You can tell that 1 out of 3 Republicans is as dumb as the other 2.
Yeah, there you go. I got it, Rick. It's, living good is the best revenge. I mean, that's an old saying or words to that effect. Success is the best revenge, et cetera. But I think we have to acknowledge that the next couple of weeks and probably the next couple of years are going to be a real challenge for our democracy and for all of us. And we have to be prepared for that. We have to face it. Go ahead.
That's why you got to keep laughing.
Okay. Rick, thank you very much. Yeah, where are the comedians when you need them? Well, we still have quite a few. It's 44 minutes past the hour. I'm missing George Carlin, though, I got to tell you. 44 minutes past the hour. Now it's 45. I'll be right back with you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be right back with more of your calls in just a moment. Thom Hartmann here with you, helping you win the water cooler wars. Stay with us. And Matt in Arvada, California, or Colorado, excuse me. Hey, Matt, what's up?
Hey, how you doing today on this sad day?
Yeah.
Anyway, I got. Oh, I'm sorry.
I said I'm wearing black. I'm in mourning.
Oh, I'm wearing gray. Anyway, I got fact checked on Facebook this weekend for posting a meme that was questioned our tax policy, and they scrubbed it from my page, and so that's already started.
Huh? What was the meme?
Well, it was 4 panels, and like the first one was this guy who was supposed to be like Sweden or something. It's like, we tax our billionaires at 55%, and the next one was like, say, Sweden or Finland, and it's like, oh, we tax our billionaires at 40-some-odd%. And then Germany, yeah, we tax ours at 42%. And then the last panel was a guy that was just, it was the United States, and he's like, you tax your billionaires?
Wow. And they took it down? Facebook took it down?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow, and this is after they supposedly stopped doing content moderation?
Correct.
So the content moderation that they're going to keep doing is to take down left-wing memes?
Yeah, pretty much. That's what happened to me.
But if you had posted, Sieg Heil, all hail Trump or something like that, I'm sure it would have, well, I'm not sure, but.
Oh, yeah, there's no saying.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, and I got another point, too. I'll just keep it quick for you.
Thank you.
I think a big difference between 2020 and what's going to happen in 2024 is that there's, the flying monkeys. We're going to have red hats, brown shirts, intimidating voters.
Yeah.
To a much further degree, there's no saying, Trump's got his bully pulpit, how he's going to whip these maniacs into a frenzy,
Yeah.
So.
No, I get it, Matt. I get it. And I fully expect it too. Matt, thank you very much for the call. Michael in Orlando. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Hey, Tom. First, I just wanted to thank you for what you do.
You're welcome. Thank you for the acknowledgement.
I found your videos on YouTube by just searching what the Gilded Age was, because in reality, I went to school here in Florida. I'm 30 years old, and they never actually taught us that. And I went to supposedly, some of the best classes, advanced placement, whatever. And they never really, it was taught, but it was like, we're going to spend 5 minutes on this and then move on kind of thing. And I think now looking back that was on purpose, right? So my question to you is, what do you think as an individual? Because you feel helpless, right? With what the knowledge that you gain is both a blessing and a curse, because you know why everything is going wrong and you know how to fix it, but you don't know what you can do to help as an individual, especially when you don't have money and power, which the people who do have money and power, they actually use it to corrupt the system even more instead of help as well.
Yeah. I get it, Michael, and forgive my sneezes. It's cold here in the studio. I think it's better to be informed, even if it occasionally makes you feel disempowered, than to be uninformed. And I would encourage you to share what you have learned with other people, because we need to have that. Michael, I got to run, but thank you for the call. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. You know, other countries enjoy benefits like free health care in college, modern mass transit, affordable housing, food, and drugs. They also have inexpensive internet and phone service without companies listening and selling their information. Schools that don't need to mention school shooters. Streets and parks filled with pedestrians and children instead of tents and homeless people. We, on the other hand, have the world's largest collection of billionaires. Most Americans probably didn't realize this was the choice they were making back in the election of 1980 when Reagan and Bush promised morning in America. But here we are. We have been just basically sold out to the billionaires by all these years of Republican, Reaganomics. What do we do about it? Well, there's a lot we can do about it, and it starts with getting politically active. There's a great op-ed about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, America Chose Wealth Over Well-Being. Check it out. Back 51 minutes past the hour, picking up your calls here. Will in Riverside, California. Hey, Will, what's up?
Good morning, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. I'm a 74-year-old African American, and I've been around and I've watched. They've taken they finally did what ending slavery gave us the right. We got the right to vote, and they've taken our right away, and it's the downfall of the company. But the reason I wanted to call you, I have a question. Why is it that we all the money that the federal government takes in and taxes and other things, we put it in private banks, and we have to borrow when it comes time that we need to. The government needs to buy something. We have to borrow from the banks who they're charging us interest. And my understanding of it now is that we owe banks so much money that all we're doing every year is paying this astronomical amount of money in God, I get the words skipping.
It's okay. I get your point, Will. What's going on here is that the federal government has the ability to borrow money. The way that we borrow money is we issue IOUs. They're called Treasury bills. And we pay that money back with interest, as you pointed out. Many of those IOUs are purchased by banks, but it's not banks that sell them. It's the U.S. Treasury that sells them. In fact, you can buy them directly from the U.S. Treasury online. There's a bunch of different kinds of Treasury bills, and they have different dates and maturities and interest rates. But when we fought the one time that we've had no debt was in 1834, I think it was. It was in the 1830s when Andrew Jackson paid off the national debt, and that produced the longest and deepest recession or depression in American history. And it was because treasuries are a form of investment that is absolutely safe. It's the only absolutely safe investment out there. So we need a certain amount of debt because treasuries are actually necessary but after World War II, at the end of World War II, our national debt was at 120% of GDP. Our national debt was greater than our entire GDP. Right now, our GDP is around $34 million a year, and our national debt is $36 million a year. So we're approaching where we were at the end of World War II. After World War II, Harry Truman and then Dwight Eisenhower started paying down our national debt. John Kennedy continued. We had a top 90% income tax rate until the 1960s, the mid-60s. Lyndon Johnson dropped that down to 74%, but he closed a bunch of loopholes in the process. And by the time Ronald Reagan came into office, that massive national debt that was larger than the entire gross domestic product of the country was down to a mere $800 billion, less than $1 trillion. But Reagan had this idea that this guy named Jude Wanniski, this Republican strategist, gave him, that he should spend like crazy while he was president and cut taxes on rich people to drive up the national debt, because if he could drive the national debt up high enough, it would force Democrats to cut social programs like Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, Section 8 housing, all these kinds of things, education. And so Reagan borrowed like crazy. Clinton came in and actually reduced the national debt. Bush came in, he ran up the national debt even farther with more tax cuts for billionaires and 2 wars that were off the books. Obama came in, he tried to pay down the national debt, and then Trump came in and he added another $7 or $8 trillion to the national debt. So right now we've got this huge national debt, and all of it is the result of tax cuts to billionaires. If you add up all the tax cuts for billionaires from Reagan's to today, cumulatively, their impact, it's way over $36 trillion. So this bizarre theory that Reagan had that he could break the will of Democrats by running up the national debt. And by the way, last year, we spent about a little over $600 billion in interest on that national debt that 3 Republican presidents ran up. So, it was all done for political purposes. It is being used as an excuse right now, the national debt. You will hear Republicans talking about how, we can't afford this, we can't afford that, we can't afford cheap college, we can't afford good health care, we can't afford, because of the national debt, which they themselves created. They're still doing Reagan's, thing, Jude Wanniski's 2 Santa Claus strategy. So that's what's going on, Will, and that's how it works. Did I make sense? Did I answer your question?
But I think of what I'm going after is that money is private banks, and
no, not necessarily.
All of that money.
Not necessarily. When treasuries are sold, that you're selling IOUs, and anybody can buy them. A lot of Americans own treasuries. A lot of foreign countries and companies own treasuries. There's banks that own treasuries as well, but anybody can buy them. We haven't cut a deal with private banks. That's not what's going on here.
Okay, maybe I'm a little confused on it.
Yeah. The Treasury Department, which is the U.S. government, says, okay, we're going to spend $1 trillion this year more than we made, so we're going to offer $1 trillion worth of Treasury bills in $10,000 denominations, $100,000 denominations, $1 million denominations, $5,000 denominations. Anybody can buy them. They're sold at auction. And the amount that they pay interest, the amount of interest that they pay is a function of how many people show up and want to buy them at the auctions. And the crisis that we will face is if the day comes that nobody shows up at the auction, nobody wants to buy them. So far, we haven't had that happen, but that's the crisis everybody's predicting. Will, I got to run. Thank you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America. This is an 1856 first English translation edition of this author. And but you can still get it online. A lot of different booksellers sell it. This is from chapter 11. What sort of despotism democratic nations have to fear? I had remarked during my stay in the United States that a democratic state of society, similar to that of the Americans, might offer singular facilities for the establishment of despotism. And I perceived, upon my return to Europe, how much use had already been made by most of our rulers of the notions, the sentiments, and the wants engendered by this same social condition for the purpose of extending the circle of their power. This led me to think that the nations of Christendom would perhaps eventually undergo some sort of oppression like that which hung over several of the nations of the ancient world. But it would seem that if despotism were to be established among the democratic nations of our days, it might assume a different character, different from the Roman Empire, for example. It might be more extensive and more mild. It would degrade men without tormenting them. I do not question that in an age of instruction and equality like our own, sovereigns might more easily succeed in collecting all political power into their own hands and might interfere more habitually and decidedly within the circle of private interests than any sovereign of antiquity ever could do. But the same principle of equality which facilitates despotism tempers its rigor. When no member of the community has much power or much wealth, tyranny is, as it were, without opportunities or a field of action. As all fortunes are scanty, the passions of men are naturally circumscribed, their imagination limited, their pleasures simple. This universal moderation moderates the sovereign himself and checks within certain limits the inordinate stretch of his own desires. Independently of these reasons, drawn from the nature of the state of society itself, I might add many others arising from causes beyond my subject, but I shall keep within the limits I have laid down to myself. Democratic governments may become violent and even cruel at certain periods of extreme effervescence or of great danger. Excuse me, think of George Bush and 9/11. But these crises will be rare and brief. When I consider the petty passions of our contemporaries, the mildness of their manners, the extent of their education, the purity of their religion, the gentleness of their morality, their regular and industrious habits, and the restraint with which they almost all observe in their vices, no less than in their virtues, I have no fear that they will meet with tyrants in their rulers, but rather guardians. I think then that the species of oppression by which democratic nations are menaced is unlike anything that ever existed before in our world. Our contemporaries will find no prototype of it in their memories. I am trying myself to choose an expression which will accurately convey the whole of the idea I have formed of it, but in vain. The old words, despotism and tyranny, are inappropriate. The thing itself is new, and since I cannot name it, I must attempt to define it. I seek to trace the novel features under which despotism may appear in the world. The first thing that strikes the observation is an immutable multitude of men, all equal and alike, incessantly endeavoring to procure the petty and paltry pleasures with which they glut their lives. Think now of a television society. Each of them, living apart, is as a stranger to the fate of all the rest. His children and his private friends constitute to him the whole of mankind. As for the rest of his fellow citizens, he is close to them, but he sees them not. He touches them, but he feels them not. He exists, but in himself and for himself alone. And if his kindred still remain to him, he may be said at any rate to have lost his country. Above this race of men stands an immense and tutelary power, which takes upon itself alone to secure their gratifications and to watch over their fate. Facebook? That power is absolute, minute, regular, provident, and mild. It would be like the authority of a parent if, like that authority, its object was to prepare men for manhood, but it seeks, on the contrary, to keep them in perpetual childhood. It is well content that people should rejoice, providing that they think of nothing but rejoicing. For their happiness, such a government willingly labors, but it chooses to be the sole agent and only arbiter of that happiness. It provides for their security, foresees and supplies their necessities, facilitates their pleasures, manages their principal concerns, directs their industry, regulates the descent of property, and subdivides their inheritances. What remains but to spare them all the care of thinking and all the trouble of living? Thus, it every day renders the exercise of the free agency of man less useful and less frequent. It circumscribes the will within a narrower range and gradually robs a man of all the uses of himself, The principle of equality has prepared men for these things. It has predisposed men to endure them and oftentimes to look on them as benefits. I have always thought that the servitude of the regular, quiet, and gentle kind, which I have just described, might be combined more easily than is commonly believed with some of the outward forms of freedom, and that it might even establish itself under the wing of the sovereign of the people. Our contemporaries are constantly excited by two conflicting passions. They want to be led, and they wish to remain free. As they cannot destroy either one or the other of these contrary propensities, they strive to satisfy them both at once. They devise a sole, tutelary, and all-powerful form of government, but elected by the people. They combine the principle of centralization and that of popular sovereignty. This gives them a respite. They console themselves for being in tutelage by the reflection that they have chosen their own guardians. And it continues. It's a brilliant book. A Democracy in America by de Tocqueville.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Here to the third hour on this day of mourning, the first day of the Trump presidency, of the second Trump presidency. The headline over at the Washington Post right now is that there are several thousand immigrants who were using the Customs and Border Patrol, the CBP app that's been in place for a couple of years now, where you can apply for asylum through the app, and the app then, and you stay in Mexico, and then the app creates an appointment for you at some point in the future, and then when your appointment's available, you show up at the border, you show the app to the Customs and Border Patrol people, they let you through, you go to the courthouse, you have your or whatever the building is, and you have your appointment with somebody who can listen to your claim. All of those people who are down in Mexico, many of them have been there 6 months or longer. Many of them, young families, women and children. Their apps just all notified them that all appointments are canceled. There is no more immigration into the United States, period, from this via the southern border. So, it's begun. It has started. Trump has not yet started signing his executive actions, and we don't yet have a good sense of what they all are going to be. We know what he's promised. He's promised to reinstate Title 42. This is a kind of an obscure public health law that gives the president, in a case of a public health emergency, the ability to close the border. And Trump used COVID as before and closed the border. And he says he's going to use. He's just going to say, these brown people from south of the border, they're carrying disease, and so we're going to close the border. We'll see if he does it. The mass deportations he's promised, we'll see what happens. Ending birthright citizenship. We discussed this on the program, I think, a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, about how they plan on doing this. The argument is highly technical, but, it might fly with this Supreme Court argument to end birthright citizenship, which would be interesting because Vivek Ramaswamy is here as a result of birthright citizenship. Neither of his parents were U.S. citizens when he was born here. So, how's that going to play out? He wants to build more border wall. You'll recall during his last presidency, he built 40 miles of border wall. And he wants to also basically federalize local law enforcement. He's promised to put tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China on his first day in office. We'll see if he does that. He has apparently postponed the TikTok ban. Now, the law doesn't provide for that. The law says that you can postpone the ban if there's a purchaser, to give that purchaser enough time to work out all the details and transfer data and information, all that kind of stuff. And it can last for, as I recall, 90 days. Trump just says, hey, we're just going to suspend the law, essentially. We're going to ignore the law. We'll see how that plays out. I'm guessing there'll be lawsuits around that. He reiterated in his speech after he was sworn in that he intends to drill, baby, drill. By the way, it's confirmed. He never put his hand on the Bible for his swearing in. Again, I think he was afraid it would catch on fire. So his drill, baby, drill agenda, we'll see what that means. In all probability, it means that his Secretary of the Interior will, blow up Biden's banning offshore drilling in the Atlantic and Pacific, and will open up the wildlife refuges in Alaska and in some other parts of the United States to drilling, which is kind of weird. I mean, there's not a shortage of oil right now, right? Gas is pretty cheap. Oil, there's plenty of oil. In fact, one of the reasons gas is cheap is because so many people are buying electric cars. He also wants to eliminate the electric vehicle mandate. It really wasn't a mandate for electric vehicles. It was a mandate that auto manufacturers have to cut their emissions in half by 2027. And the easiest way to do that is to sell a bunch of electric cars. But another way to do that is to sell fewer, big trucks that get 16 miles to the gallon and more lightweight vehicles that get 40 miles to the gallon. I mean, they could do it, right? But anyhow, Trump says he's going to undo that. There is a ban on exporting natural gas. He's going to undo that, which will help the fracking industry. He says he's going to stop the transgender lunacy. Nobody's sure exactly what that means, but transgender people all across the country are starting to get, are very, very concerned about this, where this is going to go. He says he's going to end all diversity, equity, and inclusion policies in the federal government immediately. I'm guessing that will happen. He's going to demand that federal employees all show up in the office. Right now, the Social Security Administration is probably the largest agency where there's still a lot of people who can work from home. He's going to bring them all back home. He's going to end funding to, quote, radical left non-governmental organizations, nonprofits. That would be presumably bringing back the so-called global gag rule so that any federal dollars that go to any nonprofit that anywhere in the world even mentions the word abortion no longer gets federal funds. But I'm guessing that it's going to go way beyond that. We'll see. He did promise on day one, and we'll see what that means. So there's a lot of possibilities. So that's what I've got. What's on your mind today? Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's up?
Hey, not too much, Tom. Look, I'm glad you opened up with South Korea, and that is bold. I first served in South Korea when Chandawan was the dictator, / president, right? This has been my issue. People think that, Dave's just some sort of zealot, career service member, patriot. No, look, the problem I have is dictatorship works, but it cannot work in America. And I'll tell you why. Just like no matter what happens in South Korea, you can never out-dictator the Kim dynasty and the Kim regime in North Korea.
Right.
You're never going to do it. All right, Trump, if he becomes... Look, here's the formula. I'll give Trump the winning formula if he's winning. Save TikTok, okay? Ensure people can still work from home, okay? Do a faux show of force on the border. And I don't know, people may be clamoring for him to change the Constitution. Look, there's a constitutional coup. They're doing it in the Republic of Georgia. This is what we have to be on guard for. Pro-Russia forces in the Republic of Georgia are engaged, with that billionaire, Bidzina Ivashvili, to do a constitutional coup to keep Georgia from, going towards the EU. And we're kind of like in the middle of it here in America, but it may be premature. With all this effort by the Trumpers and the right wingers to modify the Constitution. All right, and the thing is social media plays a big part in this, and I don't know when we're ever going to have a frank and honest conversation.
We won't. We won't. I mean,
Trump,
we had a caller just in the last hour who said that he posted something on Facebook that said that. These other countries all tax their billionaires, but we don't here in the United States. And Facebook took it down. I mean, Facebook is owned by the guy who owns 1/50th, 2% of all millennial wealth in America is in Mark Zuckerberg's money bin. And apparently you're not allowed on Facebook to point out that billionaires in America generally don't pay taxes. It's crazy. Dave, thank you for the call. Spot on. It's coming up on 15 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, fair and only slightly unbalanced. Right back with your calls right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Exposing the con in conservative. I'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back. Let's pick up some calls here. Michael in Gainesville, Florida. Hey, Michael, what's up?
Yes, hi. This is something for your newsletter slows to pick up because it's not as widely known as I think it really needs to be. On the downside, there's a hidden power that we just don't get is real. It's a core ruling power, and on the upside, there is something that hidden power fears. When we at times of national crisis, there's always a tip to that spear, and it's always students and teachers. And this timeline is important. It wasn't that long ago. It's a different mental state. It was a time of activist populism with David Hogg reacting to the MSD crisis, and it was a completely different time psychologically. But I watched, and this timeline is important, on a Saturday morning, it was Hogg and the teachers union. They announced on a Saturday morning that they were jointly going to be striking. That Saturday evening, supposedly, whoever the powers are, Congress got together, and by the next Sunday news cycle, it was announced that there was going to be a supposedly revolutionary gun bill, the first ever. Now, there was no previously working on it. They weren't even, it was just like a miracle out of nowhere. And it was never reported on, ever, that I ever heard of, that it was because of that threat of the teachers and the students getting together. And that is our power.
And the teachers and the students got wind of the fact that there was legislation being worked out and decided to get ahead of it.
Well, how odd that they wouldn't have announced that it was being done. And that's if they were cooperating with Congress, that just doesn't sound real.
Yeah.
What sounds real is that there's a hidden power we're not aware of, and that what they're really terrified of is teachers and students getting together. And unfortunately, I think there's going to be a time of crisis. Who knows what it'll be, but I'm afraid it's coming.
Yeah.
I hope not.
I think you're right, Michael. I think we are already into a crisis. We just don't know the depths of it or the breadth of it.
Well, and the crisis, if I could, you mentioned before, you described it morbidly wealthy as a metaphorical.
Rich,
I don't think it's metaphorical. It's clinical, and we should call it post-success stress syndrome, post-success stress syndrome. It's a neurological thing that happens.
There you go. I'm with you. Michael,
and we
that's
need
a good
to
one.
understand that.
Thank you very much. Marie in New York City. Hey, Marie, what's on your mind today?
Glad to hear that you're calling it day of mourning. We are exactly 2 hours and 15 minutes, I think, into fascism here in the United States. I want to say this. Conservatism is the greatest threat, apart from the climate crisis, to the planet today.
Well, and conservatism is exacerbating the climate crisis.
It's exacerbating it, and we won't be able to get around it because of conservatives and conservatism.
Yep.
Now, bless your heart, as much as I love you, dear heart, you start talking about fascism at least 3 years too late. That should have been coming out of your mouth years ago.
Well,
But
the first
that's
piece I
beside the
wrote
point.
accusing the
It's
Bush
here
administration of fascism was published in 2002
now. No, I'm
in
not
Common
saying
Dreams.
that you were calling it fascism does not have to do anything with Bush. Fascism is fascism. Hyper-imperialism, that's what everybody needs to talk about. Hyper-imperialism, hyper-colonialism.
I like it. Marie, thank you. Spot on. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Back in 1968, when Lyndon Johnson was president, Earl Warren resigned from the Supreme Court. He was a liberal, even though he had been appointed by Eisenhower. Johnson wasn't able to replace him, in part because of Republican opposition in the Senate. And so when Nixon came in, he had this opening, but he wanted to have two openings. He wanted to get rid of Abe Fortas, who was the most liberal member of the court. So he had his Attorney General, John Mitchell, start an investigation into Abe Fortas's wife. Now, there was nothing there. There was no smoke at all. She had done absolutely nothing wrong, and history has proven that. But they were going to drag her before a grand jury and possibly before Congress and just, drag her through the mud. And this caused Abe Fortas to resign, and that gave Nixon two openings, and that's how the court turned to the right. I'm suggesting that Democrats should do the same thing with Justice Thomas. I've got an op-ed about it at Hartmann Report. You can read it over there. Check it out.
Live democracy, guiding us through the storm. In the heart of liberty, a brighter world is born.
21 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Nina in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hey, Nina, what's up?
I want to be spot on, too, today, Tom. You mentioned I Paid Hitler, the book.
Yes, by Fritz Tyson.
And I ran and got it. It took me 58 days to get it.
Did you get it from your library?
No, I purchased it.
Oh, wow.
And I felt so excited about it, so I can put it in my hoarding now. But my husband, Barry, said it's mind-blowing perfect, what the book is about, of course.
Yeah.
And then he happened on The Night of the Long Knives, which is on, I think it's on Prime. And he said, of the literally few hundred films we've watched on Hitler, this is it. And I said, I'm going to tell Tom. So I think it's on Prime, The Night of the Long Knives. I know you're familiar with it.
I am.
And I know you are. And he said, this is the ultimate piece of
I have
work.
not seen that show, or that documentary. I'll have to look for it. Thank you for the heads up on that.
Please do. And don't ride bicycles nude in Portland. That's what they say about Portland. I just read that yesterday.
Well, I've never done it, but
US.
there's a big naked bike riding thing every year here in Portland, and lots of, so. But I've never participated. And I won't.
No, of course not. No.
Not my thing.
No, of course not. And God bless you. Anyway, that's it for me today.
Okay, thanks, Nina. Appreciate it. Mike in Salem, Oregon. Hey, Mike, thanks for listening to KMUZ. What's up?
Oh, what's up is the Supreme Court has done it to us again, Tom.
Uh-oh.
They let a criminal in the White House, and 2000, they put Bush in there, stop the votes.
Yep.
Whoever heard of that?
Yep.
It's just ridiculous, and we got to scream that to the top of our lungs. And it's the Supreme Court is the reason Donald Trump.
It's not the Supreme Court. It's five
else.
Republicans on the Supreme Court. Let's be very clear. There were four dissenting Democrats on the Supreme Court saying this is wrong.
Oh, good. I'm glad there's some pushback there.
Yeah. Just like with Citizens United, there were four Democrats saying no way. And every single one of the Shelby County decision that gutted voting rights. Again, you had four Democratic nominees saying no, we shouldn't do this. This is you're overturning a law that Congress passed. But the five right wingers. This is not the Supreme Court. It is five right wingers on the Supreme Court, dating all the way back to the early '70s when Nixon changed the makeup of the court by driving Abe Fortas off the court by threatening to prosecute his wife, which is frankly something that Biden should have done with Ginny Thomas. But that would have required the Justice Department having some courage and sadly. Mike, thanks for the call. Go ahead.
I love you, Tom. Love you, Tom.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Good talking to you. Shirley in Hopewell, Virginia. Hey, Shirley, what's up?
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I just wanted to say, living here in deep, deep blue redneck Virginia, that Virginia did go. Red Virginia. Virginia did go blue. Okay, Virginia is a blue state.
Yep.
So if you want to scream from your lungs about how dissatisfied and disgusting and in distress you are, purchase an American flag, stick it on the back of your window in your car upside down. That's the international sign for distress in America.
Yeah.
And everybody will know exactly what you mean because they did it to Mr. Obama, and we're going to do it to him.
That's a good suggestion.
That's all I
You can also get those clingy ones. You know, they're just transparent plastic, and you just slap it on the inside of the rear window so that people can't deface it or steal it. That's a great idea. Shirley, thank you very much.
Do it.
Yep. Christy in Greenville, Alabama. Hey, Christy, what's on your mind today?
Good afternoon. This is my first time calling, and I've been watching you, and I just want your perspective because you seem to be able to talk people off the ledge. And if you'll just allow me to connect some dots here, everyone remembers the Kevin Roberts interview that he did on MSNBC where he said that Project 2025 would be implemented and it would be bloodless if the left allowed it.
Right.
But they did not focus on the last part of what he said, which is we are not at this time prepared to reveal the remainder of Project 2025 to the public. And I have long suspected that they are trying to bring back slavery. So now they have this, Sarah Huckabee Sanders has approved this 3,000-bed detention center on an 800-acre parcel of land in Arkansas. I saw the video. I always bet things, so I looked up the article, and they say it's due to prison overcrowding.
Yeah.
But that's obvious. I don't think that's true.
Well,
and
slavery,
I think they're going to make the migrants into slaves.
I think that's possible, Christy. I mean, if you are convicted of a crime in the United States, you can be enslaved under the 13th Amendment. So that makes perfect sense. Christy, thank you very much.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be right back with more of your calls. It's the place where smart people get their news, the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Storm is Here, An American Crucible by Luke Mogelson. This is from the introduction. Hoping to stave off an encroaching despair on the morning of January 7th, 2021, I left my hotel in Washington, D.C. and took a taxi to the Lincoln Memorial. I was looking for sanctuary, and an open-air chamber designed to resemble a temple seemed as likely a place to find it as any. I'd been there once or twice before, passing between the marble columns. You weren't humbled into silence as much as welcomed by it. When I arrived this time, however, the monument was closed. Squad cars were pulling up, officers expelling a mob. Many of the people wore red MAGA hats and Trump 2020 shirts. I asked someone what had happened. It seemed that a woman had been posing for pictures with a Gadsden flag, "Don't tread on me," below a hissing snake on a yellow field, when an officer advised that such displays were not allowed. A fracas had ensued, and now the Trump supporters converged at the bottom of the steps, the same steps from which, in 1963, Martin Luther King delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech, and the crowd then began calling the officers Nazis, Marxists, and pigs. Young men in blazers waved their middle fingers. "Christ is king," they chanted. "Aren't we the pussies?" a little bald man asked. "Honestly, we're not overrunning them?" "That's when they start executing people," said a woman in her 30s, glaring hatefully at the police. It occurred to me that some of the officers impassively absorbing this abuse probably had friends in the hospital. Less than 24 hours earlier, I had watched Donald Trump tell a similar, though much larger mob assembled on the far end of the reflecting pool that extended behind us, quote, "If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore," end quote. Thousands of people, many armed with bats, clubs, whips, and other rudimentary weapons, had proceeded to march up the National Mall. At the Capitol, they had wounded around 180 law enforcement agents, smashed through doors and windows, and frantically hunted for politicians determined to sabotage the peaceful transition of power. Some carried nooses, barked racial epithets, assaulted journalists, and called for the vice president to be lynched. On the Senate floor, I watched Trump supporters ransack desks and steal confidential documents. A bear in a horned headdress wielding a spear pronounced Mike Pence an effing traitor. Then he led the rioters in prayer. An officer who suffered a stroke after being maced would later die. Now it was not the police, but the Trump supporters who were outraged. Once again, they believed they'd been wronged. Once again, their sense of injury was blistering. The woman with the Gadsden flag was a pastor from Los Angeles. "I know that had to be Antifa," she said of the attack on the Capitol. "I know it did, because everyone here," she gestured at the livid crowd berating the police, "there's such a spirit of community." She began to weep. "How dare they?" she demanded of the officers. "What is wrong with this country? This is not my America. I don't understand." That made two of us. I could think of only one question to ask. Where do we go from here? The pastor wiped her tears. Her suffering was vast. "I will tell you this," she sobbed. "I will not turn the other cheek to what's not right. This is not right. This is not right." The first epidemic I reported on was in West Africa in 2014. Although Ebola was far more deadly and contagious than COVID-19, the international response is inadequate. Liberia's largest slum, a dense warren of crude squatter dwellings in a narrow peninsula that jutted into the Atlantic from downtown Monrovia, was a formidable early hot zone. Below a canopy of rusty sheet metal, some 80,000 denizens lacked running water, relieved themselves in the cramped gaps between walls, and repurposed detritus as a bulwark against eroding riverbanks. As the virus wiped out whole families, the Liberian military sealed off the encampments with ramparts and barbed wire. Gunships patrolled the coast. Crime spiked. Panic spread. Soldiers fired on people trying to escape. The community looked doomed. After 10 days, emissaries from the slum prevailed on the government to end the blockade. In exchange, they agreed to implement a suite of precautions, identifying and isolating sick people in their homes, tracking down their recent contacts, and vigilantly monitoring each individual for a period of 3 weeks, the maximum amount of time that the virus was known to incubate before manifesting symptoms. Normally, all this should have been the responsibility of medical professionals and epidemiologists. In the slum, though, the job fell to locals. Against most expectations, within a month, the Ebola outbreak had been contained. Monrovia was not an aberration. In the absence of rescue by the world and their own governments, which were among the poorest on the earth, West Africans proved remarkably adept at helping one another to survive. Neighborhoods mobilized, healthcare workers volunteered, secluded villages formed ad hoc task forces to oversee sanitation, quarantines, and mandatory social distancing. Education was crucial. Initially, conspiracy theories abounded. Some West Africans embraced a rumor that the virus was a ploy to solicit foreign donor money. Spiritual healers proffered metaphysical explanations for the vagaries of death and illness. In one remote hamlet I visited in Sierra Leone, help support progressive radio. If you're listening to us on a commercial station, call their advertisers and let them know you're listening. If you're listening to us on Pacifica, one of our many nonprofit stations, please support them when they do their fundraising drives. Thanks for supporting progressive talk radio, and tag you're it. Back in 2010, when Viktor Orban took over the Fidesz party in Hungary, that party was sort of like the Republican Party. It was just a conventional conservative European political party. And he has turned it into a neo-fascist powerhouse He pushed through he altered the nation's constitution to push through what we would call gerrymandering and voter suppression so that his party will always win. He campaigned on building a wall. Build a wall was literally one of his campaign slogans, and he did build a wall across the southern border of Hungary to keep out Syrian refugees who were fleeing the violence when Russia was bombing that country. His other two campaign slogans were, and I quote, "Restore Christian purity and make Hungary great again." Seriously, back in 2010, 6 years before Trump, there's an amazing backstory about how Viktor Orban is being cloned, essentially, in the GOP. You can find the article over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour, and the WhiteHouse.gov website has been transformed into a Donald Trump Lollapalooza. It's a festival of pictures of Trump and his wife and all, we're going to make America great again and all this kind of stuff. And there's a list of President Trump's America First priorities. He's going to end Biden's catch and release policies. They're going to reinstate remain in Mexico, build the wall, end asylum for illegal border crossers, crack down on criminal sanctuaries, enhance vetting. Deportation operation will address the record border crossings, suspending the refugee resettlement. After the armed forces will engage in border security. He's going to designate cartels as foreign terrorist organizations and use the Alien Enemies Act to remove them. They're going to seek the death penalty. The president will unleash American energy by ending Biden's policies of, quote, climate extremism. Right. Let's see here. Empower consumer choice in vehicles, shower heads, toilets, washing machines, light bulbs, and dishwashers. Oh, boy, we can buy incandescent bulbs again and burn a lot of energy. He's going to declare an energy emergency. He's going to end leasing to massive wind farms that degrade our natural landscapes. He's going to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. He's going to, a lot of this is just kind of BS rhetoric. You don't know exactly what it means. He's going to usher in a golden age for America by reforming the government bureaucracy. Right. End the onslaught of useless and overpaid DEI activists buried in the federal workforce. I translate that into we're going to fire as many black people as possible. President Trump is announcing an unprecedented slate of executive orders for rescission. He's signing them right now with Mike Johnson. Improved accountability for government bureaucrats. That's, code for we're going to do away with the American civil service system, or at least for 50,000 people. That was a big thing in Project 2025. Federal workers going to have to go back to work, physically. End the unconstitutional censorship by the federal government. No idea what that means. And the State Department will have an America First foreign policy. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I am not optimistic, but I'm not terrified. And I don't think any of us should be. We need to be prepared to push back, to speak out, and to stand up for this country that we love. So, what's on your mind? Angelia in Seattle. Hey, Angelia, what's up?
Well, hello, Tom. I just wanted to provide a perhaps new name for the GOP, which is Greasers of Power. The way that they disparage our name, the Democratic Party, and call us Democrats, when they call us Democrats, we should call them Greasers of Power. I'd also like to just mention that it might perhaps get evangelicals to start questioning who they're really worshiping, because greed is one of the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, I don't think they care. I always like greedy old, what was the P? No, we can't use that word. Plutocrats, greedy old plutocrats. That was what I was trying to remember. Yeah.
There you go.
Angelia, thank you very much for the call. That was a good one. Clay in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Hey, Clay, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. So this about the birthright citizenship, I don't have any strong opinion on it one way or the other, but I just have to wonder if a person has two parents from different countries, and neither are the United States, and the child is born here and they don't have citizenship, that's a person without a country. How would that work?
Well, it would, I don't know. There are people who are without countries. Many of them are refugees. But the shtick that these guys are proposing, Clay, is let me see if I can. Birthright citizenship is in the 14th Amendment, and let me give you the exact language because they're going after basically a technicality here. The 14th Amendment says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. And so what they're saying is that subject to the jurisdiction thereof, what that means is that you are subject to the laws of the country, and they're arguing that people who are in this country illegally, people who are in this country without permission and without documentation, are not subject to our laws because we don't know who they are or where they are. And because they're not subject to our laws, their children are not eligible for birthright citizenship. And so, if they can get the Supreme Court to agree with this, then what they're going to start doing is going looking for, the dreamers whose parents came over illegally, and then, actually the dreamers are children who were brought here illegally. They're going to be looking for the children of, quote, illegal immigrants who already have U.S. passports, and they're going to start taking away their passports and denaturalizing them.
Could they? I would think that would be. That they could do that going forward, but I don't see how they could take away somebody's citizenship. Why they would take away? Well, I mean, I can see why they would want to do it, but
the Constitution does forbid ex post facto laws. In other words, you can't create a retroactive law. So, but this wouldn't be a law. This would be an interpretation of the Constitution, and so that might have retroactive impact. I'm not an attorney, and certainly not a constitutional attorney. So I don't know, but I do know that that's the shtick. That's the argument that John Eastman came up with that Donald Trump is promoting.
Sure.
And it's going to have to be tested.
In 4 years, we're going to have a lot of fixing to do, assuming that we can, win an election.
I agree, and we need to get ready to. Yeah, we need to get ready to win that election too. Clay, thank you for the call. Spot on. Thank you. Andy in Bedminster, New Jersey. Hey, Andy. You're right there, right down the road from Mr. Trump, huh?
I'm at ground zero here. I need help. Save me. Listen, Tom, I just wanted to say this, okay? Do you know a guy, Greg Palast?
Palast, yeah, I know Greg very well. He's a friend.
And I knew I saw him on your show before. What about Vigilantes, Inc.? Did you watch that? And is that like
I narrate that movie. Mule? Oh, no, wait a minute. Vigilantes, Inc., yeah, Greg's movie. I'm in that movie, I think. No, I'm not. It's just there's just a big thank you at the end for me. Yeah. I went down to Los Angeles for the premiere screening of that, the red carpet screening of that, and Greg and I
haven't heard you mention it.
No, we played it here on the program, or pieces of it. We had Greg on the show. I went down to L.A. and I did that thing. We talked about that. So yeah, I'm real familiar with Vigilantes, Inc. And you're going to be hearing Greg on this show on Thursday with follow-up to that.
Yeah, because, I mean, Republicans cheat. I mean, there's one sitting in jail right now for that woman, Peters or whatever, Clara Peters or Cleta. I don't know. I can't keep all the names straight, but they cheat. Did we even do one recount? I mean, we just assumed that it was all on the up and up because we don't want to look like crazy Trumpers, but they cheat. They always cheat. Every time somebody's cheating, it's a Republican. Whenever somebody's assassinating, it's a Republican.
It certainly seems that way. No, and both of the guys who tried to take a shot at Trump were Republicans.
Right. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, what are we doing here?
I got it, Andy. I got it. And people who haven't seen Vigilante Inc., get over to gregpalace.com and you can see it.
Yes.
Andy, thank you. Sonia in Marble Mount, Washington. Hey, Sonia, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I am so thrilled to speak to you. I only found out about you a couple of years ago when a friend of mine from Germany said, "Oh, you have to listen to this guy. He's so smart. He's so wonderful."
Well, thank you.
So I've been doing that ever since. But in these dark days where I can't even explain the simplest of things like tariffs on products, not tariffs on countries, etc., I wanted to thank you for having something to say about talk radio, because back in the early 90s, I got introduced to some really great late-night radio, and one of them was something I'm sure you're familiar with, but everybody else I've spoken to has no idea what I'm talking about, and that's Tom Bodett.
Oh, yeah.
Doing his wonderful stories and
Yeah.
out of cafe cups in Homer, Alaska.
Yeah, most people know him for his ads for Motel 6.
Right. We'll leave the light on for you. Yeah.
But he's good.
But I just thought, we need more things like that to be out there to give light in these dark days.
Well, he was the master of non-political talk radio, essentially.
Absolutely.
Just, talk radio about the topics that you'd talk about around the kitchen table kind of thing.
Right. But also just making kind of like Gallagher and Red Skelton and others could bring out the truth of humanity without necessarily concentrating on the ugly.
Yeah, no,
and we just need more of that. And by the way, you're not a book hoarder if you have your books aligned on bookshelves.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I am a book collector.
Myself also.
Okay, thank you,
Wonderful
Sonia.
to talk to you, my dear.
Great talking to you, too. Thank you so much. We'll be right back with more of your calls here. It's 46 minutes past the hour. Stay with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's talk media for the rest of us. I'll be right back with your calls. Welcome back. Julia in Ada, Oklahoma. Hey, Julia, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I have some simple things people can do while they're feeling absolutely helpless.
Okay.
Okay. The first thing you do, well, this is just a couple things. There's probably other things out there. But if you're tired of spending $1 for a tomato, you can go to Tractor Supply Company and get some tomato plants that will grow in your house. You just got to put them in a window, put some plastic up there to keep the really bad cold out, or grow them under lights, any kind of light, and get some seeds for mixed lettuce. You can grow lettuce in your house. You don't need to, these things are self-pollinating or don't need to be pollinated.
Yep.
And you can grow them in an old ice chest. And that's something you can do for yourself.
Yep, you're right.
And that's really easy.
Louise and I grow our own vegetables on our back porch. You can I used to do it in my office.
You can do this in a small apartment, in a senior citizen living space, or if you're a nomad, you can do it in your motorhome.
Yep.
I'm just saying, it's something you can do, and people are feeling really helpless right now.
Yep.
Then the next thing you do, if you have a little backyard, is you check with your mayor and see if you're allowed to grow a few chickens. You put in some rows of kale or something that they can eat, cover them with row covers, and that keeps out the bird flu stuff. And so now you got protein and salad.
Yep.
But most importantly, you have found out that you can approach your government and make something happen. And most people have never done that.
Yeah, I love your optimism, Julia. I love it.
I'm just saying, these are simple things you can do while you've been sitting around for months fretting over being helpless.
Yep.
And this is something you can do during the long winter months for yourself.
I got it. Julia, I need to move along, but thank you. That was good. That's great. Thank you. Shirley in Mesa, Arizona. Hey, Shirley, what's up?
hello, Tom. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I wanted to offer a name for the resistance.
Okay.
Les Mis.
Les Mis?
Les Mis.
We are the Les Miserables?
Yeah. Exactly. Paints a picture, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And there's a lot of, all the homelessness in America and all the poverty in America. And of course, Trump is going to make it worse by making billionaires richer and poor people poorer. And
Absolutely. And who are we coming for?
Yeah. It's going to be real interesting. By the way, has anybody noticed that Melania Trump's hat is identical to the one that the Hamburglar wears in the old McDonald's ads, cartoons?
Oh, I have not seen that.
The Hamburglar has this hat with a wide brim and a white band around the black hat, and it's identical, absolutely identical to the hat that Melania Trump is wearing. So strange little trivia there, Shirley. And Melania held the Bibles, but Donald never put his hand on them when he swore himself in. So did he really swear himself in? Is God really watching?
What are those evangelicals going to think of that?
They'll come up with an excuse. They don't care. Shirley, they're not really Christians. Shirley, thank you for the call. It's 10 minutes before the hour. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So Vivek Ramaswamy, during the first Republican debate, was laying out his vision for America and by the way, he was the number 2 guy in the debate, according to the Washington Post, in which he was arguing that we should basically do away with all of our federal agencies. Really, virtually all of them. Just shut them down and make them go away. He's not the first person to argue this. David Koch, running on the Libertarian ticket in 1980 for vice president, was arguing the same thing. He had a long list of federal agencies he wanted to shut down. This is not an uncommon thing among billionaires, and Ramaswamy is a billionaire. They basically want to take America back to the 1920s before we had what they call the welfare state. And if they do so, they will turn America into a failed state. They want to make America into something like Haiti or Libya, and that would be a disaster. There's a whole article about it that you can read all the details. It's titled, "Is Vivek Ramaswamy a Different Kind of Republican Cat?" at HartmannReport.com. Check it out. Got your calls here. John in Seattle. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Yeah. Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. Happy Martin Luther King's Day.
Thank you. Back at you.
I just wanted to bring up I'm kind of wondering if there's going to be a major backlash on these prisoners coming out, and that maybe they might want to stay in prison because there's people that are going to probably have their phone numbers and names and where they live, and it could be like, a big backlash on them. And I wouldn't want to get out knowing somebody would want to come after me.
I doubt it. There are not organized bully boys on the left, frankly. We once had the Weather Underground. They got crushed by the FBI. We haven't had an armed or violent left-wing movement since basically 1975.
Well, what about Antifa, though?
There is no such thing as Antifa.
Okay.
Antifa is a contraction of anti-fascist. My father was Antifa. He volunteered to fight in World War II to fight the fascists.
Right.
There is no organization called Antifa. There's no headquarters for Antifa. There's no phone number for Antifa. There's no membership for Antifa. Antifa is a boogeyman that was made up by Fox News and right-wing radio hosts to scare the hell out of conservatives. That's all.
Right.
Pure and simple.
Well, I'm just curious, though, that there might be people out there that would want to take these prisoners that are going to get pardoned.
I don't think so,
want to be careful, don't you think?
I don't think so. No, I don't. I really don't. I don't think there's any risk to them at all. John, thanks for the call. George in Coarse Gold, California. Hey, George, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Just a quick observation and a recommendation. The observation is that Joe Biden has come and gone from Washington, but Louis DeJoy is still Postmaster General.
Yeah, good point.
And the recommendation is this new book by Chris Hayes that's coming out soon. Sounds very interesting about how our attention is being diverted from all these screens and everything, how it's affecting our brains. And I think it'd be a good guest to have on for a quick interview.
Yeah, Chris is always welcome on the program. So if he's got a book out, we'll certainly reach out to him. Thanks for the heads up on that, George.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. John in Plymouth, Ohio. Hey, John, what's up?
Oh, hello. I didn't think you were going to get to me. I've been listening to your program for a while, but a few things today. You know what? On this immigration, the cost of this immigration, moving people out of the country, Hope to come up with I've looked into some of the countries, their yearly salary, where they came from. My gosh, he could offer them $1,500, and a lot of them would get on the train, a bus, or a plane and go back home for that kind of money.
Oh, it would be cheaper to pay them to leave the country than to pay people to track them down and haul them out?
Well, no, you take a look at some of them countries where they come from and do their yearly income, and a lot of them were not top of the food chain down there, you know.
No, I get it.
So, hey, $2,500, and you can go back home in a plane. You might be able to live and reestablish yourself with that kind of money, but that's just one thing.
Yeah,
and
I get it.
I don't know. That's just one thing I would say we might consider doing.
All right, thank you for that, John. I appreciate it. Julia, you got a quick one here in Madison, New Jersey?
Yeah, very quick, very simple. About the woman that called in about the flag.
Right, putting an upside-down flag on your car, yeah.
You can buy American flag stamps. Always use them upside down.
You're right. You're breaking up, Julia, so I'll tell your story. You can buy American flag stamps, and you can put them on your letters upside down and pay your bills that way, and it's a little personal statement. Excellent. Julia, I got to run, but thank you for the call. That was a good one. And thanks for being so brief. It's the end of the day. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the people around you, and stay safe.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
All these journalists are like, Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Congresswoman, are you going to the inauguration? Are you going to the inauguration? Let me make myself clear. I don't celebrate rapists.